Okay. Says I am live, so people should be coming into the room any moment. Hi, everyone. Okay, so as you come into the room, we are just testing audio and we're testing visual to make sure that you can see me and you can hear me, that you have no problems with audio or visual. So jump into the chat box. Let me know that you can see me and you can hear me. The class will be starting in about 10 minutes, so get whatever you need to be comfortable, to be ready to go. Make sure you have your notebook to take a lot of notes because they're going to be coming at you. So jump into the chat box. Let me know that you can see me, that you can hear me, and we'll be starting in just a few minutes. There's 19 in the room so far. Excited. So for anybody that just jumped into the room, we are testing audio and we are testing visual to make sure that you can see me and you can hear me. We don't want anybody to have any technical difficulties throughout the class. And so we thankfully have very minimal problems with this webinar software. It seems to go very smoothly. People seem to be able to hear me and see me pretty well, which is awesome. So just make sure that you can see me and you can hear me. That chat box is for you guys to use throughout the whole entire class. If you are people that like to chat with one another, you can make friends. But yeah, if you are somebody who likes to just take notes and stick to yourself, feel free to do that as well. Pop into the chat box though. Let me know that you can see me and you can hear me. Our class is going to begin in just a few minutes. Thanks for being early, guys. You are the early birds. I love it. I always recommend just showing up a little bit early just to make sure that there's no technical difficulties. When the class starts, and so we want you to just be comfortable and excited and ready to take a lot of notes. It's going to be a good day. Are you guys having a good morning / day / whatever time it is for you? Let me know. I love communicating in the chat box. If you want to, throughout the class, tell me the points that you love or, just cheer me on or say whatever you want to say in that chat box. It always helps me to know that I am nailing the points and I'm giving you content that you want and that you deserve. And so that's why I'm here. So yeah, anybody that just popped into the room, we are testing audio and we are testing visual to make sure you can see me and you can hear me. So just shoot a little message into the chat box. Let me know that you can see me and you can hear me. Look at Johanna, I believe, is in Germany right now, and it's wine o'clock, so she's going to have some wine. And hey, if it's noon and you want some wine, do that as well. There are no rules in this class, so do whatever makes you happy. I am drinking coffee out of my Christmas mug because it's November, so it's basically Christmas. So if you just showed up, let me know that you can see me and you can hear me. Pop into the chat box. You're going to hear me say that about 17 more times. Just want to make sure you guys have no technical difficulties. Awesome. Awesome. Amanda can see me. Megan can see me. Quality is good. Hey, Everett. Excited. We'll be starting in about 5 minutes. So grab your coffee, water, whatever you need to do to make yourself comfortable. We will have a few breaks throughout this class, but the breaks are very short. Time to let you go to the bathroom or refill your coffee cup, whatever you need to do. So take the time when you can, take the breaks when you can. I just let a bunch of people into the Year of the Book course. on Facebook. I will repost that in the chat box so that you guys, anybody that wants to join. So anybody that just popped into the room, we are testing audio and we are testing visual to make sure that you can see me and you can hear me. So just leave a little message in the chat box. Let me know that you can see me and you can hear me. We're going to be starting in just a few minutes. I'm going to pull this light over a little bit, so I'll be right back. Woo! Anyone that just popped in, testing audio, testing visual, making sure you can see me and you can hear me. So let me know. Don't want to have to deal with these issues halfway through the class. Webinar Jam, it's the platform that we use. We have had no issues with it whatsoever, which is awesome. By far, if you are looking to do a webinar or you're wondering what's the best software out there, I can tell you that we have had fantastic experiences with Webinar Jam. Only good things to say about them. So if you just popped into the room, we're testing audio and visual. Pop it in the chat box. Let me know that you can see me and you can hear me. We've got a few minutes before the class begins. So if you want to grab coffee, water, run to the bathroom, change clothes, put on your comfy clothes, whatever you want to do, this is your day. There are no rules. Just get ready to take a lot of notes. If you're not a note taker and you just want to sit and soak it in, you can do that as well. You are going to get the recording to this class 1 hour after the class happens. And so you can watch it over and over again. So yeah, don't be scared or nervous if you miss a point or if you need me to backtrack and go back. That's what the recording is for. So we're going to have a great day together. We got 32 people in the room right now. Excited? So many of you guys signed up. We had 5 people sign up last night, overnight, which I love that because we always strategically just leave it open because there's always people that are the night before something. They're like, you know what? I have time and I want to take that class, and we honor those people and we want them here. So if you're one of the 5 people that joined last night, welcome. We're so excited to have you. So I've been preparing for this class. I've been getting ready for this class. It's my favorite class to give, and I only give it once a year. So it's technically my second time giving this class, but I loved giving it last year, and I'm excited to be with you guys today. So people that just popped in, we are testing audio and we are testing visual. So make sure you can see me and you can hear me throughout the class. Just going to let a few more people into our Facebook group. Someone says, love the beats. I love my Beats by Dre. They make me feel so gangster. We're here in my loft today. So this is the downstairs part and the outside world, little utopias out there. So I moved my computer down from my office so that I could have a little space in the living room with you guys today. So let me know that you can see me and you can hear me. I'm going to ask that twice more, and then the class is just going to start. And once it starts, it's going to be quick. It's going to be rapid fire. We're going to talk about a lot of things. We're going to take a lot of notes. A notes packet was sent to you, so I recommend either having that printed out or having that open in a browser, whichever one works best for you. If you are somebody who likes to take notes in a notebook, then have your notebook ready to go because it's going to get real. I'm going to do my introductions and a few first points, and then we're going to actually do a little bit of digging where you're going to be writing some stuff down. In all the classes that I've given, which have been a lot at this point, I found that it's super helpful to have some interactive portions where you kind of get to dig deeper with your thoughts and your feelings and all of that. So I have built that into the class. So everyone let me know. You can see me and you can hear me. Let me know where you're coming from too. This chat box is for you guys. So talk to one another, make friends. People on the internet are cool. So just, cheer each other on. This is our day. We get to do whatever we want during this day. We make the rules, and as the person who makes the primary rules, there are no rules. You can wear whatever you want. You can drink whatever you want. You can do whatever you want. So just let me know where you're coming from. We've got Atlanta in the house, South Carolina in the house, Nashville, Tennessee, Greenville, South Carolina. These are all my Southerners. What's up? Whidbey Island, Washington. Heck yeah. Awesome. Denver, Colorado, North Carolina. You guys are awesome. I'm going to say it one last time for the people in the back. We are about to get started, so let me know that you can see me and you can hear me. We don't want any technical difficulties. So we're gonna check the box one last time. Awesome. Looks like everybody's good. They can see me and they can hear me. I love Everett. I love that you're in this class with me right now. Like, I feel like a piece of home. Everett is from Connecticut. That's where I hail from. I'm in Atlanta today, but I love my New Englanders, wherever you guys are. Long Island, Illinois, Virginia, Pittsburgh. This is amazing. You guys are amazing. Grand Rapids, love Grand Rapids. So yeah, this is the final time. Last call. Let me know you can see me and you can hear me because I'm about to dig in. So just a few housekeeping rules before the content gets really, really real. I talk very fast and I get very passionate. So just get ready for that because it's going to come flying at you. A lot of times I don't speak with a filter, so just get ready for that. It's Hannah Unscripted. I'm excited about this course. I'm passionate about this course. I love the year of the book. We developed this course specifically after we developed the writing intensive. Now, if you've never taken a writing intensive before, that's completely okay. This is not a part 2 to the course because there are some people that they want to blog and they want to write different things or they want to write poetry or whatever it is. This is a course designed for the people that want to do book writing specifically. Doesn't mean you need to write the book tomorrow. Doesn't even mean you need to write the book next year. I promise you, this material is going to apply to you at any time in any area of your life. So thank you for making the investment in this material because you will probably likely be thankful that you have this material moving forward. I love preparing this course. I gave this class last year. It was such a fun class to give. So a few things. One, you should have gotten a notes packet, either printed that out or you have that in your browser. I'm going to be guiding you throughout the points. And so I'm kind of going to be like your tour guide. So even if you don't have it open, that's completely okay. And we're going to be doing a mixture of teaching styles and digging in and doing a few exercises. And then at the end of the course, we are going to be doing an extended question and answer. So if you have questions throughout the course, I invite you to jump into the chat box and ask your questions. You will see at the point where it says write your message here, there is a little word bubble. If you click down, you will notice that you have the choice to either chat or ask a question and answer. So please kindly click on the question and answer portion when you go to ask a question because it will come up in red on my screen and I will know to flag it and answer it for you guys during the question and answer portion of the talk. So we will have a few breaks during this so that you can run to the bathroom, you can refill your coffee, whatever it is that you need to do. They're going to be really quick, minimal breaks. So get ready to be planted for the next 3 hours because that's the way that the class is designed. It's an intensive for all intensive purposes, no pun intended, that it would be intense and it would be fast and it would be a lot of information in a short amount of time, which is my heart, what I'm passionate about. Once again, you guys have this chat box. Please utilize the chat box. If there's a point that I'm making that you love, that you appreciate, please just let me know that I am speaking to you. Always want to make sure that I'm seeing every person in the room. If you're like, expand on that point, I will expand on that point for you. So talk with one another, dialogue, let us know what's going on. There will be times throughout the class where you will have the chance to, if you are brave enough, put your words into the chat box for other people to read and see. We appreciate vulnerability in this space. We love when people are vulnerable and honest, and this is a safe place for you to do that. I put my heart on the line every single day, and so I appreciate when people do the same. But yeah, I think that's about it for the housekeeping rules. You will get the recording to this class an hour after the class finishes, and you will also have an invite into our Facebook group. So if you're not a Facebook group person, that's completely fine. You don't have to join the group. If you want some accountability, if you want to create some writing partnerships, then that group is for you guys. We created the Facebook element of the group, one, because we've honestly not found another group setting better than Facebook groups. We've researched, we've checked all over the internet. It seems to still be the best way to interact with one another. Number two, everybody's on Facebook, so it's just the easiest premise instead of making you guys download an app that you wouldn't use otherwise. And number three, it's just really important to surround yourself with cheerleaders. I think so easily we surround ourselves with people that want to speak down to us, don't necessarily want us to win, maybe not even in a malicious way. They just don't understand what we're trying to do and accomplish. And so when you enter into that Facebook room, my hope and my prayer is that you find people that are for you and are with you and are dealing with some of the same fears and struggles as you. So that's my spiel. My inbox is open at any time, info@hannahbruncher.com. If you have questions after the class, if you have a question you wanted to ask, but you didn't want it to be answered in front of everyone, if you're having any issues with the recordings, we have a really great track record, though. We've never had any issues following the course. And so we are going to roll. We are going to roll out with just a really brief introduction. I don't want to talk in length too much about myself because I want to get into the course material, but I'm just going to give you guys a little bit of an introduction on myself and the book writing process, since this is a course for the people that want to write books. We are saying books as in anything that is over 20,000 words, which seems like a lot of words, but once you get rolling, I promise you, you will become a master. We are digging into discipline today like no other. I love discipline, and I will tell you, you need discipline in order to write a book or books, whichever one you prefer. And hey, pop into the chat box. Let me know if you want to write one book, you've got one book stirring in you, or if you are like, I want a lifetime of writing books, because it's cool to know the differences between you guys in the class. Use that chat box for whatever you want. So me personally, I grew up wanting to write books, plural. That was me. My grandmother told me when I was 6 years old that I was going to write books. She said that she was going to see my name on bookshelves. And I don't know about you, but I always say that when somebody you love says something, declares something over your life, you will do anything you can to prove that person right. And so my grandmother, she unfortunately was never able to see me write those books. Apart from the cryptic novels that I wrote when I was younger, I wrote a lot of murder novels when I was like 7, 8, 9, 10. It was a little bit weird. But I know that she is seeing what's going on now. I know that she is proud. And I just wrote in my book acknowledgments for my second book that every book that I write is ultimately for her, because she is the one that believed in me. She is the one that invested in me. So growing up, I wrote a lot of books. I wrote a lot of fiction primarily. Fiction, I would say, is my first love. Another thing for you to throw into the chat box, if you love fiction, nonfiction, memoir, poetry, whatever it is, we want to know what styles and genres you love and adore. And so I would say my first opportunity to write my first book came up shortly after I had started my organization, More Love Letters. I had done an audition for TED, and the TED Talk went up online. It was very serendipitous how that happened, and literary agents started reaching out to me. And from that point forward, it was kind of like, okay, am I going to write this book? Okay, I guess I'm going to write this book. And so it was a very fast, expedited process to get me into writing that first book. And I often think that that's sometimes the best thing to do, is to light a fire underneath you, because otherwise, if we don't create deadlines and we don't have people holding us accountable to those deadlines, we will always make excuses for why we can't do something and why there will always be a better time to do it. So my first book was a memoir. It was called If You Find This Letter. It came out in 2015. I knew nothing about the book writing process until I hurled myself into it. And then I made it my mission to study and understand the book writing process more than anything else, because I figured if I could hack this process, then I could write a lot of books. And so I wrote my second book this year, actually. I did a lot with book proposals and a lot with writing and rewriting that we will get into throughout the class. We sold my second and my third book the week before my wedding in December of last year. And then I had about 6 months to write that book, turn it in. We just went through all the editing stages for book number 2. And we are now into the line by line edits, which basically is like you are not allowed to touch any of the words on the page. You simply just need to clarify things. So we're getting into that. My second book is coming out May 29th. The publishers just moved the date up from August to May, which I'm pretty pumped about. I will start work on my technically third book in early 2018. But if anybody's been following along on Instagram or Twitter, you know that I'm trying to slip a third book into the mix right now in the month of November. I'm doing a NaNoWriMo, which is National Novel Writing Month. It's my first time participating. Basically, the goal is that you would write a body of fiction work within a 1 month span. 50,000 words is the goal. So I'm doing a NaNoWriMo. And that's really just because I am training my brain to say, hey, this is a discipline. This is a hack. This is creative work can be created when we sit down and we do the work and we do it consistently. And so that's been my experience with book writing. This class, we are digging into the process of book writing. We are digging into the ways to just start. We are digging into storytelling. We are digging into the nitty-gritty of what needs to go into a book proposal, the difference between traditional publishing and self-publishing, the importance of building a platform. It's all happening right here, right now. So welcome to the course. One more note before we dig into the notes packet. Anybody that's taken one of my classes before, you know that there is one story that I always share because it is the story that basically sums up the way that I teach classes and the way that I deliver content to people. So this story took place several years ago in November of 2014. So the anniversary of this story is coming up. Me and my friend Nia, we decided that we were going to go camping, though we knew nothing about actually camping. And so we packed up our bags. We took our time getting to the campground. We probably should have hurried to the campground a little bit quicker because by the time we got to the campground, the sun had set. It was dark out. We had only one working headlamp. And so we took a bunch of our stuff. We put it out in the middle of the campground. We went back out to the car. And when we came back, there was a Maglite flashlight sitting in the middle of that campground. So this is the point where I'm thinking, this is how every bad horror novel or horror movie has worked out, is that somebody is here and they are going to abduct us and take us, and this is going to be the end. What we found out fairly quickly is that the Maglite flashlight had been left by a man who was at the campground next to us. He realized we were probably going to be struggling a little bit, and so he figured we probably needed a little bit of extra light. That man was like our saving grace throughout that whole entire camping trip. I always say that he was like from Touched by an Angel because I thought he was an angel. He had 2 first names. And for some reason, I've always thought that angels have 2 first names, like Luke John. I don't know. I don't know where I got that from, but I say it all the time in this story. And I still don't know if that's even true. But Luke John, that wasn't even his name, but I'm going to call him Luke John. He came over and he built the fire for us because it was very obvious early on that we did not know how to build a fire. And then Luke John came over later and he rebuilt the fire for us. And then he invited us over to his campground to enjoy his fire. And then when we went to sleep at night, we woke up and Mr. Luke John had rebuilt our fire and also had coffee waiting for us that he had built or he had made over the fire. And so at that point, you're thinking, I should probably marry this person because, he makes fire and he makes coffee for me. But what was crazy is that once we got dressed, we got ready, we went out for a little bit of a hike. We came back and he was gone. He had packed up his stuff and he had left. And probably about an hour later, we realized we were going to pack up our stuff and we were going to leave as well. Because in that whole time that we had spent with him, he built our fire, but he had never once taught us how to actually build the fire. He did not give us the tools we needed to build our own fires. And so that might seem like a small, insignificant story, but for me, that was pivotal. And that honestly changed the way that I think, the way that I teach, and the way that I write. Meaning that we can live in this world where we just build our fires as big as possible, and we can have other people come sit by our fires and glean off of our inspiration, and we can just spend our whole time building as big of a fire as we possibly can. But the problem with that is that people are only going to make it 5 steps that way or 5 steps that way before they have to come back and sit by our fire for warmth. And I don't know about you, but I'm way more interested in teaching other people how to build fires than I am by having you just consistently sit by my fire. I want you to be able to go out into the world, to propel out into the world, to use the tools that you've been given and create the things that you know it is on your life and it is marked on your life to create. And so that is why I teach these courses, simply because I want you to know how to build the fire. I don't need you to sit by my fire. You can be inspired by the things that I do. I think inspiration is great, but I think that inspiration will keep us in a hole if it does not lead to some sort of action steps that are going to make us different people when we walk out the door today and we go and do our lives, or when we sit down to do our writing process. And so that is why I am coming at you real and live, not just with inspiration, but with action steps, because I want you to be fire builders. And then you can go out into the world and you can teach other people how to build fires. And then all the little fires will start popping up all throughout the world. And I don't know about you guys, but it's 2017. I think it is safe to say that the world is a little bit dark, scary, and uncertain right now. And we could all benefit from a little bit more light. So that's the place that I teach from. That is where my heart is. It is to give you as many tools as possible to propel you outward. You don't have to stay and hang out with me. I would much rather you choose to stop watching my Instagram story or somebody else's Instagram story if it means that you are going to cultivate your craft and you are going to set out and do the things that you know you need to do. So I teach from that, and I teach from a heart of discipline of there is no magic solution. There is no one way to do all of this. It is simply a matter of you sitting down and doing the work consistently every single day, even if no one sees it, even if no one acknowledges it, even if you might get to the end of your life and never see anything move. I'm not hoping that for you. I'm not wishing that for you, but sitting in this chair today, I think the reason that you made this investment and you decided you were going to take this course is because you want to write books. And I believe that you want to write books for the right reasons, that you have a voice and you want to put that voice out there. But I also believe that you guys are nitty gritty in the sense that if you were to write a dozen books and at the end of your life, you never saw the outcome and you never saw how it impacted people. And maybe that outcome would become something 20 years or 30 years after you wrote those books. I still believe that you are the people that would sit down and do the work. So I have new fire in me because it is 2017 and because it feels like every single day there is a chance to watch other people live their lives. And my biggest message today is stop watching everybody live their lives and just live your life. Do the things that are going to make you come alive. And I can promise you, watching somebody write a book is going to be a heck of a lot different than you sitting down and writing the dang book. So that was just the introduction. If you don't even know what's about to come at you guys, because we are getting into the notes packet, it is about to get real. If you flip to your notes packet or you open it up in your browser, you're going to notice that after the opening page, there are 3 main points. And these are kind of those 3 introductory points to sitting down and writing the book. And so the first one, I kind of already dug into a little bit, but we're going to dig a little deeper. It says, number 1, 1 million ways. And the reason that I start with this point is for the simple fact that there is no one way to write a book. No one can sit here and tell you you have to do X, Y, and Z, and the perfect book is going to come out of you. The cool thing about writing books is that your process is uniquely your own. And so it's going to look different for you than it's going to look different for me. And so we are going to dig deep and figure out what the processes are for one another. Please let me know in the chat box if you are one of the 100 million, 1,000 people, myself included, that at one point or another has Googled how to write a book because you were just desperate for 5 steps or 10 steps. I can tell you after writing several books, none of those steps actually, I'm not going to say they didn't help me, but they didn't prepare me for the fact that the best thing that I could ever do was just sit down and start to write. My friend Douglas, who I'm doing NaNoWriMo with right now, says the story is sitting inside of you. You just need to sit down and you need to let it out. And that's often the hardest thing. There's probably a lot of you in the room that, as much as you want to write books, have a really big problem with sitting down and dedicating yourself to that first sentence. We make a lot of excuses that keep us from even getting to the starting line. I like to talk about book writing as if it is like running a marathon. And the thing is, you can't just show up and run the marathon. You need to plan, you need to train, you need to dig in, you need to build, and then you will have the longevity to write to run a marathon. And the same thing for writing a book. Writing a book is not the same thing as writing a blog post. And writing a bunch of blog posts that you string together at the end of the day does not equal a book. A book has a start and a middle and a finish. And so it is its own beast, and we need to tame the beast. It is like, for any Stranger Thing people in the room, this is like its own Demogorgon, and we have to fight the Demogorgon. We got to tame the Demogorgon and put it down on the page. You will notice throughout this class that I am going to say a lot of cheesy metaphors. That is just one of the many that are going to come flying at you. But I love Stranger Things. I do. So yes, 1 million ways to start. One of the things that I love to do is I love to look up my favorite authors, what their writing processes are. So you'll see that some writers, they get up at 5:30 in the morning and that is their golden hour. There are some writers that are like, the midnight oil burns. I don't even start writing anything down until midnight. My friend Claire, who I'm also doing this book writing challenge with, she doesn't start writing until like 11 o'clock at night. And that works for her. She'll write from like 11 to 1:30, and those are her golden hours. Me, I am a morning person for sure. But I love to look at other authors and just see the way that they write and the way that they create. Anybody who is a fan of C.S. Lewis in the house? C.S. Lewis would spend the best of his hours writing in the morning. Around noon, C.S. Lewis would get up, he would go for a walk, he would stop at the pub, and he would have a beer with some friends, and then he would plug back in from the hours of 5 to 7. And so that's all to say, everybody's process is going to look different. Maya Angelou, another favorite author of mine, one of her husbands actually hated the fact that she wrote books. Like, he hated her career, which is crazy. And so what she would do is she would rent a hotel room, and she would go to that hotel room during the day, and she would write her books. And then she'd go home as if nothing had happened. She didn't share that part of her life with him because he didn't want to know about it. And so your process is going to look unique and different to you as an individual. But as you're taking notes throughout the class, I encourage you to dig deep to think, okay, what do I know about myself already? Do I know that I like to write in the morning? Do I know that I like to write in the evening? Like, Where do I like to be writing? Do I need to be in a library setting? Do I do better in a coffee shop? Everyone is going to be different. Number 2, you already have permission. The reason I share this point, and I share similar points in my writing intensive, is that, as I said, a lot of times it is not the fact that when we sit down and we start writing that we hit all the hurdles. We usually hit the hurdles before we even begin the work. So some of you in this room, and you can tell me, I will not be offended, if you tell me that you hesitated to even sign up for this course. You thought, I can't do this. I don't know. I don't think that I have a voice that's worth sharing. A million lies that were basically telling you, you can't write this book. You'll never write books. You're not going to get published. This isn't going to happen for you. And we listen to those voices. I always say that for a long time in my life, I listened to fear, and fear became that familiar voice to me, almost like the voice of somebody who sits down and they have lunch with you every single day. And it doesn't mean that the voice is healthy, and it doesn't mean that the voice is good, but you listen to the voice because the voice is familiar. So for some of you, that is fear, and you've listened to fear for a very long time, and fear has told you, hey, you don't even have the permission to be here. You can't come to this class. You can't write a book. Who do you think that you are? And I would tell you right now, it is so important to invest in truth over lies, because lies want to come in, they want to mess up your brain, and they want to kill all the good things around you. And so if you feel comfortable and you feel confident with it, and even if you don't, and you just want to be vulnerable, I encourage you, put into the chat box the biggest lie that has kept you from sitting down, finishing the process, or putting the process out there in the world. Let me know what that lie has been. So number 3, kill the magic, meaning when you sit down to do the work, I can promise you it's probably not going to look like you thought it would look. I know that when I first started writing books, I thought that it was going to be like birds chirping and like some kind of like Snow White stuff where like animals were like making coffee for you, and the coffee is always overflowing, and you're always super inspired, and you're wearing clothes, and like that's what we think the writing process is going to be like. Usually the writing process is like, well, I haven't changed my clothes in 3 days. I really should probably shower because I think that I smell. The coffee's stale. It's usually always stale. And a lot of times, especially if you're writing fiction, like the characters do not obey you. They do not do what you want them to do. And that's the beauty of being a writer, is when the story takes on a life of its own. So when I say kill the magic, I mean for the fact that like kill whatever it is that you think is how it's supposed to feel or how it should feel when you sit down to write, because it's going to look completely different than that. I can promise you that. When I finished my first book, I thought there was going to be like fireworks. I thought like a freaking parade was going to come down the street. And I'll tell you that I was sitting and I finished my book. I wrote the last word, and I kind of just looked around, like waiting for something to happen. I don't know what I thought was going to happen. But I realized in that moment, like there was a sense of peace and there was a sense of closure. And I realized it's over. It's done. And I got up, I sent in the book. I went, I took a shower. My boyfriend picked me up and we went and we ate a burger. The burger was the size of my head. And then I laid in the parking lot of the burger joint. That was probably just to be dramatic and probably because I felt like the freedom of like fresh air. But really, there was no big fireworks moment. There was nothing that I could pinpoint and say, well, that was the moment that the world knew that I finished a book. But I will tell you something. Sitting there at dinner in that moment, it was a moment that was completely, entirely mine. I didn't even bother to try to share it or articulate with him. Like, one, I think I was afraid to not be understood in that moment. But two, I realized sitting there like, I did it. I did the thing that I thought for so long that I couldn't actually do. I did the thing that I didn't think that I deserved to do. I was right to believe in myself. And that is one of the most powerful feelings in the world, is when you wake up and you realize, wow, it wasn't the craziest thing in the world to believe that I could actually do this thing. And so when I say kill the magic, I mean, kill the expectations, Just sit down, just get dedicated, and I promise you, magic is going to show up in other ways. And it's going to be a different kind of magic than you ever expect or you can ever predict. And it's going to be all completely your own. And in a world where it feels like we do everything in order to share it with other people, it's something very special to have our own moments and to have our own feelings and to have something that feels so good and feels so empowering that to try to articulate it and put it out to the rest of the world, it just would never be done justice. And so those are our first 3 points before we start to attack the process. So if you flip to the next page of notes, you will see it says planning your own process. So I'm going to ask you some questions and then I'm going to shut my mouth while you guys have some chances to dig in and to take some notes. And I say, write it down in your notebook, but if you also want to share it in the chat box, that's why the chat box is here. It's for you guys to share with one another. So the first question that I want to ask you about your writing process is, what does your perfect writing day look like? I mean, like nothing gets in the way. No babies are screaming. Nobody is like texting you, trying to like make plans with you. Like if you had a perfect writing day, what would that look like? I'll give you a few minutes to write that down. Your perfect writing day. What does that look like? It's important that we do this digging. I used to think this stuff was dumb, and then I realized this was the stuff that actually transformed me. So if you feel like it's dumb, you're not alone, because that's how I used to be. Okay, the next question, and you will have this recording so you can go back and dig deep if you need to or want to. What stands in the way of your perfect writing day? What are the obstacles? List them in the chat box if you want. Anything from social media, full-time jobs, all of it. What are the things standing in the way? Kids. Someone says kids. I love honesty in this class. There's no wrong answers either. Put it all out there. Someone wants to make risotto. I love that. That's part of the perfect writing day. That's awesome. Okay, so we're on question 2. What stands in the way of your perfect writing day? I love what Elizabeth just said. She said, I feel like I should be doing something more productive, something that produces results now. One of the biggest things that keeps us from actually sitting down and writing. Someone says, I don't know where to start. I just need to begin and write something. Huge. Okay. Third question. What obstacles do you put in your way all on your own? So like basically if you're like running a race, you like legitimately are taking like hurdles and putting them in front of you. We all do this. What are the obstacles that you put in your way all on your own? No one needs to stop you. You don't even need to do a hashtag not today, Satan, because it's like, not today, Mary. Not today, Hannah. Like, you are in your own way. Someone said Netflix. Heck yes, guys. The Netflix binges need to stop. Rory and Lorelai, they're not going to write that book for you. That was for somebody today. That was free wisdom right there. Rory and Lorelai, they're not showing up to write the book. Someone says doubt and a lack of discipline, sleeping in. Some of you need some earlier hours. I love it. Jessica just goes, I have a ridiculous habit of sitting down to write and then suddenly feel the need to clean the whole house. That's basically like every day that I sit down to write, that I think there's something that I could do right now that would produce results right now. And so I'd rather put my energy into that thing. This is all too real. This is why we ask these questions, because hopefully what you guys will notice is that you are all afraid of the same things. You are not alone in the things that you are feeling. Fear is interesting in the way that it tries to make you believe that like it is this unique song where only you know the words. But if you start to sing out the fear, you find out that everybody else knows the words. It's like a Taylor Swift ballad. We all know the words to the song. We all just got to shake it off. Okay, practical question for you. Some of you haven't asked this question and you need to ask this question. Realistically, let's talk real, not in your ideal world, but in your real world. How much time can you give to writing throughout a week or during a day? Might be 2 hours, might be 5 hours, might be 15 minutes. Realistically, throughout a week and throughout a day, how much time can you give to writing? Remember, you have the recording if you need to go back and re-ask yourself these questions, because I know we go fast because there's a lot of meat to get into and we only have 3 hours, and 3 hours seems like a lot of time, except it's actually not. So the last question, dig deep, dig into your heart and your soul. What is one thing that you know you need to eliminate? You just need to eliminate it. Doesn't have to be forever, but think about like 30 days, because anyone can do anything for 30 days. And so whether it's like Netflix for 30 days at the start of January, or social media for 30 days, or 60 days, or 90 days, what is the thing that you are willing to sacrifice on the altar so that things get written down? I mean, holler at me just so I know that I'm not alone, that you sit down to write and all of a sudden you're right here and you're scrolling and all of a sudden 20 minutes goes by, because I know I'm not alone in that. This is the thing that a lot of times we need to eliminate. Somebody said like the Whole30. Yes, the reason I say the Whole30 is because I did a Whole30 last month, which was like the most awesome thing that I've ever done. And then I got a bunch of my friends to do the Whole30. And so everybody is like Whole30ing all around me because I'm like an advocate for it now. But throughout the Whole30, I told myself throughout the whole thing, you can do anything for 30 days. You can do anything for 30 days. And if somebody tries to come in and tell you that you can't, it's usually yourself or somebody that maybe you should cut out of your life because they're toxic anyway. You are capable of doing hard things. You are. It's just a matter of fact. Whole30 changes lives. You might do a Whole30 social media style, 30 days, get rid of it and see what freedom you experience. That's what I love about Whole30, is that it's not about losing weight and it's not about getting more energy. And it's not even about like claiming back your life so much as The woman who created Whole30 created it so that people could experience freedom. And the same thing would happen if we would get rid of the thing we know we need to eliminate, and we would sink into the thing we know we say at the end of our lives, if we didn't do it, it would absolutely break our hearts. And I know that for a lot of you, that's writing. I promise you, you would experience freedom. You don't think that freedom comes from discipline, but I promise you, all freedom stems from discipline. I believe it with my whole entire heart, and I have designed my life around it. Okay, so those were just a few questions about planning your process. I am going to challenge you to do two things. One, I am going to challenge you to the thing that you wrote down and said you know that you need to eliminate. I'm going to challenge you. I'm going to challenge you to pick a parameter and eliminate it for a little while, whether that is a week, whether that is a month, whether that is until you sit down and write the dang book. I want to let you know that that thing that is stopping you, you are capable of uprooting it and placing it somewhere else, and it will be there when you get back. Gilmore Girls is not going to change. Stranger Things, like, it's not going to come up with a new plot line while you're gone. You won't miss anything. The other thing that I'm going to challenge you to do after this class is I'm going to challenge you to pull out your planner, whether you are a paper planner or you are a digital planner. And if you don't have a planner at all, then that's your next step, is that you need to go get a planner, because I promise you, time that you don't plan will end up being wasted time. That's for someone in the back. Time that you don't plan will end up being wasted time. And so you need to be able to write down one writing session that you are going to have in the next week. I want to see it. I want to see it lived out loud. I want you, when the writing is done, I want you to email me. Tell me the words that you wrote. Tell me when you sat down. Tell me how it felt. Even if it felt like a complete failure, please let me know about it. Tag me. Do whatever you have to do to let me know so that I can celebrate with you. Those are the two challenges. Eliminate something and pick a writing session and put it in your planner. A few notes before we get into the war room. Just about this is kind of off the cuff, but I just want to say a few things that have really helped me with this. One, utilize airplane mode. That is the reason for airplane mode, is to put your phone on airplane mode and not be distracted by it. Number two, there is an app called Forest. I believe it's like a $2 app where you can set intervals of time that you're not allowed to pick up your phone. And what it does is, like, it plants a tree. And if you sit for that amount of time and don't touch your phone for that amount of time, like, a tree gets planted. And then you build this little forest. And then if you do that enough times, actual trees get planted in real life, which is pretty awesome. But it sounds like a cheesy concept, but I promise you, it has helped me be more consistent in my work and my productivity, because every time you go to write something, it's like, or you go to pick up your phone, it's like, wait, your tree hasn't been fully planted yet. So you set the interval time, you set the space. Those are just two apps that have been extremely helpful for me. And one's not even an app, it's just built into your phone, airplane mode. Use it, utilize it, get that phone out, turn off the phone. No one's going to miss you for an hour, or have it just be set up that it's like you let your closest person know, like, hey, I'm not going to be available out of pocket. If you text me, you are the only person that I am going to get notifications from. Okay. So the war room, I call it the war room because every time that we sit down to write, that is exactly what it looks like. It is a war room. We are going to war. We are going to battle. So number 4. Leave your crap at the door. It's blunt, it's true, it's real. And basically what it means more than anything is that whatever it is, the fears, the lies, the doubts, you got to leave them at the door. When I wrote that first book, what I did was I took a piece of paper and I wrote down all the things that were standing in my way. And I basically wrote them a letter and I posted it on the door. So every time I walked into that writing room, I was like, wait a minute, this is the eviction notice for all the things that want to keep me from sitting down and writing the words. We have to be able to leave our crap at the door. We have to be able to get into the writing seat before all the fear overtakes us. That's going to require discipline. It's probably going to require some accountability, but leaving your crap at the door is the most vital thing. If you're feeling it and you're feeling all the feels, take a notebook and write down all your crap. Get it out of you. Just get it out of you so that your brain gets emptied and all that's left to do is to write words. Number 5, stop comparing. This is huge because we compare every single day of our lives. This is why for some people, social media might be the thing you have to eliminate for 2 weeks just to get a cleanse, get the toxic out of you. You can't compare your process to somebody else's process. It doesn't work that way. You can't look at somebody and say, well, they've written 2 books and I've written 0 books. So that means that like I shouldn't even start writing my books. I love what Cheryl Strayed says. She says, your book has a birthday, but you don't know what it is yet. Meaning you might think that you needed to write that book at 24, and because you didn't write it at 24, you feel like a complete and utter failure. You might think, well, if I don't write my first book by 35, then that means I can't write books at all. Those are us placing untrue limitations upon ourselves when they never needed to be there. Your book is a birthday. You don't know what it is. You think you're supposed to write your book in your 29th year, and maybe that's not when you're supposed to write the book. You have to let the creative process pair with the discipline. You have to sit down and be dedicated to your own process rather than comparing your process to somebody else's. I mean, I think everyone in the room, we've probably all compared ourselves to like J.K. Rowling being like, well, she wrote Harry Potter. And if she wrote Harry Potter, then like, what's the point of me writing a book? Because like, there's never going to be another Harry Potter. She probably felt the same thing. We know that girl wrote that book on napkins. So it's like, take all of the writers and the authors that you feel like you're comparing yourself to and realize that every single person had a beginning. And that beginning was likely, probably very much so, not glamorous. And so you have to say, I'm going to stop watching so-and-so write books, and I am going to write my own books. And then number 6 is keep it sacred, meaning that every single time that you sit down to write words, it doesn't mean that every single good line has to be tweeted. Not every word has to be shared. Not everything needs an Instagram story. What you are building and investing in at this current time is a sacred process. And so if we're only putting it online to get feedback from other people, then what is it for? Make the steps to keep it a sacred practice between you and God, or whoever it is that you want to involve in this process, and realize that at the end of the day, the beautiful thing about book writing is that it is cathartic, it is transformative, it changes you into a completely different person. And everyone can just say amen if at some point or another they wish they could let something go or be someone different. I'm telling you, that's the secret to book writing, is it makes you somebody newer. It makes you somebody better. It makes you somebody who is resilient, capable. And when you write that first book, then you can sit down and you can write the second book. So number 7, it will all become something, meaning don't get into the habit of like writing words and then throwing words out. I would encourage each one of you to create a space where all of your words can go. So for me personally, I use Evernote. I don't know if there are Evernote users in the room, but it is a fantastic place to share everything and to not share everything, store everything. And so words that end up being total crap, words that I'm never going to use again, they all go into Evernote. Another thing that I might suggest to you guys that I did throughout my book writing is I had one Evernote note, or you can use Word documents, or you can use Pages, whatever you want. Some people use Scrivener. One document, name it whatever you want. So like I call mine the junkyard. And when I am writing and things get cut by me or by my editor, I put those things into the junkyard. And that means that I can dig back and get them whenever I want. They will always be there. Who in the room here, I know that I'm not alone. You've written something really powerful, and then you realize you need to cut it out, and then you delete it, and then you're like, crap, wait, no, I want that for something else. Your words might not serve a purpose and a place for this project, but I promise you, if you keep writing, they come full circle and they often get used in other different projects. So whether you call it the junkyard, my editor, she calls it like the garden, which sounds so much prettier than the junkyard. I find junkyard endearing, especially because my father was a garbage man my whole entire life. But it is the place where I put all of the words because they all come back in some capacity. The novel that I'm writing right now for NaNoWriMo is a novel that I started writing back in 2010 and then started rewriting again in 2012. And it's interesting to know that on a computer at my home in Connecticut sits that whole entire novel. I never deleted it because I figured I would never use it, but it's there and I can go and pull back from it whenever I want to. But Evernote's great because it syncs with everything. And so you've got that everywhere that you go. You got it on your phone, you got it on your iPad, you got it on your computer, but it all becomes something. Number 8, buy the journal, open the Word doc. I want you to write now for like a second, whether you put it in the chat box or you write it down in your notes, write down the things that you already know have worked for you in the past. Whether you are somebody who writes longhand first and then you type it out, whether you're somebody who needs to write with a Sharpie marker, maybe you are somebody who has to write in a Word document. Our processes change all the time, but write down your essentials and you will probably be surprised at how simple they are. I'll give you a minute to do that because if you notice, I'm like talking, using my hands, I'm getting excited. Whew. Someone says paper, Sharpies, index cards. Awesome. Google Docs. Perfect. Yes. Word doc for longer pieces. Yes. Make sure that you save that thing if you don't have auto save. That's why I love Evernote because it like legitimately syncs and saves things. So I never lose anything. Awesome. Great. A lot of journals. Everyone's pretty old school with journals. Like, hey, here's my journal. It's all right here. Okay. Now you are going to figure out why I just said that to you because I'm going to preach at somebody right now. It's about to happen. Whatever your process is, whatever it is, I'm going to be the mama bear right now. Like, I'm going to be hardcore with you. It's simpler than you think. Meaning, you got to stop being the person that says, well, I can't write the book until I go to Target and I buy a new journal. Or I can't write the book until I buy that writing software. I am never in any class going to tell you that you need to invest in another thing for you to start this journey. You have everything you need right here. People, the most common thing that I get asked, and this floors me when I am writing and I put something on an Instagram story, is what program I use to write my books in. And it's amazing to me because people are expecting me to recommend a program to them that they're going to have to go pay $99 for. I write in Pages, which is automatically given to you when you buy a Mac, I'm pretty sure. I don't do anything extravagant. There's nothing high tech. You don't need high tech systems to write a book. You don't need a new journal to write a book. You don't need a new pen to write a book. These are all secret excuses that somebody, if not a dozen of you in the room, are using to say, well, if I can't find the right journal, then I can't start writing the book. Another thing about journals, I challenge you to start on page 1 and go all the way to the end and finish the journal. Because there are so many of us in this class where we have journals that were awesome and great, but then we got inspired by something else and we ran towards that. The most beautiful thing that you can ever give yourself is the gift of finishing something. So finish the journal, open up the Word doc, open up the Notes app, whatever it is, but I can promise you it's simpler than you want it to be. And it's simpler than you want it to be because you figure if it's harder, then I get another week before I have to start. Nope, you just need to start right now. Okay, I'm done preaching. I'm going to move forward, but I know that was for somebody. Okay, so number 9, binge writing. Binge writing is basically what I was just talking about earlier, I was telling you guys, I'm doing NaNoWriMo right now, National Novel Writing Month, which basically means you have to hit about 1,600 words every single day for the month of November. Or you can like write 3,000 words and then deduct that from another day of writing. Basically, the point is to hit 50,000 words by the end of the month, which seems hard and it seems scary. But what it really is in essence is it's binge writing. It is writing, not going back to edit it, just letting your thoughts explode on the page. And for anybody that starts to write a book, that is by far the best thing that you can do to get started, is just to binge it out. Just to say, okay, today my goal is to hit 1,000 words, and that's a great marker. If you already hit the 1,000 words, and say 1,200 words is my goal today. If you've got an hour in the morning and an hour in the evening to write, I would say give an hour to writing in the morning and give an hour to editing in the evening. Break those two processes up. We will talk about editing in a little bit, but binge writing, whether that looks like an actual book that you're writing, or if you are somebody in the room that wants to write nonfiction, then I want to tell you right now, you have to become a better journal keeper. The first time that I wrote the first book, I was completely disappointed in myself when I went through my journals, because I'm telling you, my journals were like the same thing on repeat. Like every single page was like, where are you, God? Where are you? I don't feel you. Like they were prayers, they were this, they were that, they were all feelings. And I would go back and I would tell that girl, write some things down. Like write down the way that the subway looked, or the way that the subway smelt, or write down that dialogue that you had with somebody. Because what happens is that our memory tricks and deceives us. And I actually read this thing a few years back, that every time we reach back into our brain to pull up a memory, the memory changes a little bit. So if you are pulling back for a memory over and over and over again, that memory changes a little bit every single time you draw it back into focus. So the best thing you can do to combat that is to keep a journal and to write it down, and to write down the things that you feel, and to write down the things that you're being exposed to. And even when you don't feel like writing complete sentences, get yourself into the habit of writing them anyway. And please, 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 because I'm preaching to myself, write down the dates in your journal so that you have accurate timetables. If you want to be a person who writes nonfiction books, this, I promise you, is going to be the most valuable thing that you invest in, is that you become somebody who takes notes about their lives. Man, I need a manicure, but that's just a side note for that. Okay. Moving on to the next page. How are we doing out there? Let me know how you're doing. Let me know if you're feeling good, if you're going strong, if you're feeling like somebody punched you in the face. Just let me know, because we are about to hit the notes page, the 10 hacks for just starting. Just to recap a little bit, we are talking about bodies of work that are over 20,000 words. So if you are trying to write a classic novel, we are going 50 to 70,000 words is usually the length of a novel. That's a lot of words until we get rolling. So here we go. Are you guys ready? Because there's going to be even more notes. Step number one hack for just starting, something that I definitely do consistently all the time. Write as if you are writing to a friend. Doesn't mean that this has to be the tone of voice that you keep, that you always stick to. But if you're feeling stuck and you just don't know how to start, write as if you are writing to a friend. How would you treat a friend? You'd be kind to a friend. You'd be sweet to a friend. You would write out of a voice of love instead of fear. And so I find in my own writing process that a lot of times my voice is being dictated by whatever I am afraid of. But if I am writing to a friend, then that means that I want my friend to be full. I want my friend to get everything that they can out of this lifetime. I want to fill my friend with the most amount of information humanly possible. This is huge when it comes to nonfiction, that if you don't know how to start writing, write as if you're writing a letter to a friend. What would you remind them of? What would you tell them? What are the things that you would make sure that they knew before anything else? I had somebody who reached out to me, and it was a girl I went to college with. And I remember she just texted me one day and she said, hey, like, I'm just wondering if you had to rewind and go back to the point when you moved to Atlanta, like, would you still do it? Would you pack up your bags and would you leave? And first off, I thought, whoa, like, this is a huge question to be asking me in text message format. But what that actually did was I was stuck at a point in my own writing where I was writing my second book. And in my second book, though it's not a memoir, it's nonfiction, there were still some elements of me packing up my life and moving to a new city. And in order to push through the monotony and push through the points where I felt like I didn't have any words, I just started to write to her instead. It's always easier to write to somebody that you love, whether that's your wife, whether that's your best friend, like whether that's somebody that you meet on the road. Like, what are the things that you want them to know? Because that's the greatest gift of being a writer, is that you get to equip people with wisdom. That's powerful stuff. We need to lean into that. Number two of a hack for just starting is to answer your own questions. So if you are writing a body of nonfiction, for instance, and you are writing on a specific topic, then you break down your chapters into different themes and different things. But in essence, each one of those chapters is going to end up being the answer to a question. And so I always say, answer your own questions. So look at chapter 2, whatever chapter 2 is, and ask yourself the questions like, what are the things that I want to make sure I answer during this? This is how I wrote my second book. I would look at the theme for the chapter and I would say, okay, what are the things that I want to make sure I nail? What are the things that I want to absolutely make sure that I talk about? Even if it's just a brief paragraph, get to the end of that chapter knowing you answered every question. And hey, if it ends up being too many words, if you're like, oh crap, I have a 7,000 word chapter, find a way to break it up into 2 chapters. But answering the questions that you think that other people are going to ask. I always pull out to loved ones. You know, if I'm writing a chapter on, say, for instance, transition. I'm writing a chapter on transitioning from an old place to a new place. What I might do is I might hop on my Facebook and I might ask people like, hey, what are some of the most common questions that you've had? What are the things that you struggle with? We take for granted the fact that we have social media here at our fingertips. And I don't want to be the person that villainizes social media. I'm only villainizing it in the point that social media isn't the actual villain. We kind of are, because we are the ones that choose to let it control us. Like, you have to make your social media behave, but like, if you don't, then that's no one else's fault. That's not Twitter's fault. That's not Mark Zuckerberg's fault. But one of the greatest things about having social media at our fingertips is the fact that we can connect with people all around the world. You have that Facebook group right now. So if you have been writing a chapter and you're struggling with that chapter and you want to know other people's thoughts and opinions, post in that Facebook group and say, hey, I'm writing about this, and I'm just wondering, what are your questions about this? Hey, I'm writing about friendship and why friendship is so hard in adulthood. What are the things that you've experienced? What are the questions that you have? You have actual people that may one day read that book that will then get their questions answered. And so don't be afraid to ask questions before you start writing and then go to answer those questions. It's funny. I was in upstate New York. I was there, I think it was like a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago. And we were each giving TED Talk style talks on telling stories and like the power of telling stories. And I thought it was so hilarious that this woman who is like an expert journal writer and like taught us all these things about taking journals, she said, you know, if you're ever struggling or having problems with like a chapter and like making a chapter behave, just speak to the chapter, just talk to the chapter. And I was like, that sounds crazy, except I think it could actually work. If you're like, okay, chapter 6, what's the point of you? What are you trying to relay? And whatever chapter 6 tells you, write it down. And okay, chapter 6, what do we feel like is the hurdle right now? Like, why are we getting stuck on this? It might seem crazy, but I promise you, like, chapter 6 will have something to tell you. So number 3, write about why you can't really write right now. There are no excuses. When we sit down in the writing chair, I always take from the knowledge of Stephen King, where he says, you're not just going to sit down and like words are just going to come flying out of you. The biggest mistake I made for the first 5 years of writing is that I would not sit down and write until that first line came to me. Bull. That first line is ready to come, but it wants to know if you are going to sit down long enough for it to pass it to you. So when you sit down in your chair, do not expect for the muse to just show up and be like, you're here. I'm so excited. Here are all your beautiful, precious words. It usually doesn't work that way. You're going to have to sit down and you're going to have to write a lot of crappy words. And then if you stay dedicated, the good stuff is going to come. It's like mining for gold. You don't just show up and strike gold. That's like what happens in a movie. What you need to do is you need to sit down and you need to wait for the words. And so if you're like, I'm sitting down, I don't have anything to say today, write about why you have nothing to say. Just write something, anything at all that is going to get you talking and dialoguing and getting into this mode of getting your thoughts on paper. It's almost as if the muse doesn't trust you yet. It doesn't know if you're taking the work seriously. It wants to know if you are going to be dedicated to this craft, because then it's going to give you the good stuff. And so I'm telling you right now, just write about anything that you can that is going to get you into writing mode. Your brain will sync up, your feelings will get in line, and they will say, okay, so this person's been sitting down every single day at 8 a.m. to write. And so now it's becoming a habit. Okay, wait, inspiration. It's going to kick in and it's going to show up. It's like, say for instance, like this is totally off tangent, whatever, I'm going there. Say for instance, like you were to make a date with your writing, and like say for instance, your writing was an actual legit person. And so you say, I'm going to show up at this coffee shop at 8 a.m. Monday through Friday, and I am going to write for an hour. So if writing shows up every single day at 8 a.m. at that coffee shop, and you don't show up, and you don't show up, and you don't show up, eventually they're going to stop showing up too. And so what you need to do is be dedicated to show up in the place where you say you're going to be. And eventually the inspiration is going to come and the words are going to come. I am speaking from the experience that I've had with this. Number 4, water your brain with inspiration. It is not wrong for you to get inspiration from other people. It is a lie, it is a myth, a legend for you to say that you can't get inspiration from other people. Whether you have a favorite author that you love to read, whether you love the Modern Love column like me, which I read that pretty consistently, any day that I don't feel inspired, I just hit up a few blogs. I kind of like let the words wash over me. And usually one of their sentences will kick me into gear. I look up quotes from my favorite authors, anything that I can do to water my brain, to get it inspired and to kick it into gear. Doesn't mean that I'm going to write like that person. Doesn't mean I'm going to hijack their voice, but it does mean that I can be inspired by them and they can contribute to my creative process. Someone just asked, number 3, what was point number 3? Point number 3 was write about why you can't really write right now. That's a mouthful right there. Okay, so number 4, water your brain with inspiration. And number 5, writing prompts. There are a million of them online if you Google them. There are some people in the room that adamantly hate writing prompts, and that's completely okay. You can scratch out this point. You can say it never existed. But writing prompts, even if they seem silly or they seem trivial, are kind of like warm-ups for training. So like you need to stretch and you need to get ready before you do the real training. And so if you don't know what to write, I'm telling you, a writing prompt can actually be good for you. It can actually help you. You Google them, you find some that you like, you use it to get limber, stretch out, get yourself into creative mode, and then still make it your goal to write something of purpose that day that can be used for the book or something at large. Okay, number 6, this is one of my favorite methods in the whole entire world for fiction, nonfiction, whatever you're writing. It's the tape recorder method. It's taking your phone, it's putting on the recorder, and it's talking into it. So there are some people in the room that you speak better than you write, that you are verbal before you go and you write things down. Use that to your advantage. talk to yourself. When you're driving the car, talk to yourself, go home and transcribe it. If you're like, man, I really want to write this thing, but I don't, like, I've got a lot of stories inside of me and I just can't start, call up a best friend, say, hey, I need you to come to a diner with me. I am going to buy you breakfast, and I just need you to help me write some stories down. And really what they're going to do is they're going to sit there while you press record on this little thing, and you are going to tell your stories, and they are going to ask you good questions, and you are going to go back and forth. And what you're going to have after that is an hour or 2 hours worth of material that you can go back and you can play with, because a lot of times your writing voice is similar to your speaking voice. But we have to stop limiting ourselves thinking if I'm not writing it down in a Word document first, then it doesn't count. You're able to speak things out first and then write them down. Anything that you can to get the words on the page. I had a friend that did this with me throughout my first book, and I would go home from the diner with like tons and tons of material because she asked really good questions and she sat there and she listened to my stories. So don't be shy when it comes to the tape recorder, even if it's just yourself. Just talk to yourself, see what comes out of you. Number 7, reading matters. Reading matters. It's a lie for anybody to say that to be a really good writer, you just need to always sit down and write. You need to also read, because there are so many people that have come before us. They have written amazing things, and we need to do them the service of reading their words. Stephen King always says that, like, reading and writing are what is going to get us there. It's not just writing. And Stephen King is an absolute boss, so we should probably listen to anything that he says. And so don't feel guilty if during one of your writing sessions throughout the week you read instead of writing. Like, it all comes back full circle. It's really cool to study the way that people develop characters. It's really cool to see the way that people handle dialogue. Like, it's cool to become accustomed to good writing. I would challenge you to look at one of your favorite books after this class and ask yourself the question, why do I love this book so much? What is it about this book that, like, pushes me, inspires me, makes me brave? What do I like about the author? Those are all, like, good questions to ask. It's also just incredibly important that we read good stuff if we ever hope to write good stuff. Number 8, pick up authors for their voices. You might not like the content, you might not like the material, but there are some authors in this world that it doesn't matter what they write. It's just more for their voice than it is for the actual material. 1 second. I am going to grab a book right on my bookshelf. I'll be right back. Got it. I'm back. Okay. I want to show you guys a book where this example will really shine. This is number 8, pick up authors for their voices. Has anybody read this book before? It's called Eating Animals. It's by Jonathan Safran Foer. Let me know if you've ever read him before. The reason I always think about him when I share this point with people is because this is a book about, like, eating animals and why, like, we don't need to eat animals and, like, why we can be vegetarians, even though he's not telling you that you need to be a vegetarian. But the reason that I make this point is because this man is a fantastic writer. He has a fantastic voice. I ended up reading this whole entire book just because I liked the way that he talked to me. And that is a gift. I mean, this book is a national bestseller, so it's a good book. But, like, legitimately, at the end of it, I was like, Jonathan, I love bacon and I'm still going to eat bacon and I can't help it. But, like, I read the whole book from start to finish because I loved his voice. And that's why it's incredibly important for us to train up our voices. And the only way that we train up our voices is to write a lot of crappy words until we figure out how we have to say things and what we have to say. It's just a lot of crappy things until you realize, like, wait, that's my voice. That's how I say things. I'm more sympathetic, or I'm more harsh, or I'm more blunt, or I like details. I like to describe things. Whatever that is, but, like, this is just a solid example of it. That it's like, he's writing about a topic where, like, I don't know that I'll ever be a vegetarian, but by the end of it, I was like, I just love you, Jonathan. Like, I love you, and I just want to read for your voice. And that is the gift of a good writer. This is a man that knows his voice. Okay. Number 9, get physical. This one's simple, straightforward, meaning that like if the words aren't coming, get up, walk around, take a lap, walk outside, do what you need to do, get some exercise in, get your blood flowing, pumping. Just do anything you can to break the wall. And number 10, start with the easy scenes. If you are stuck and you don't know where to go, if you are in a NaNoWriMo and you need to write every single day, every single one of us, whether it's fiction or nonfiction, we likely know a scene that needs to get written down. And so start with the easy things. Like I'm just telling you, like there is no right or wrong way to do this. Anybody that tells you have to start at the beginning and then go all the way to the end, that's a lie. You can start in the middle. You can start at the end. You can start wherever you want because this is your process and this is your book. But if you are stuck on where to start, think about the scenes that you already know and have rehearsed in your head and start writing those first. Get the easy stuff out of the way. Handle the boulders later. Okay, so we are going to be taking a break in a minute. It's going to be a short 5-minute break before we get into the story, and we're going to be rolling through into the proposal, all the things. But I want to say a few things on voice because we just picked up this book right here. And he really inspires me because he really knows his voice better than a lot of other authors know their voices. And I want you guys to know your voices. And so, like I said, voice comes from practice, from writing a lot of things, and your voice is going to change when you write fiction because the voice of a narrator might be different than the voice that you would write in nonfiction. So you might have a lot of different voices. But I have a few key pointers about this. One is that you don't have to be overly spiritual, overly literate. I don't even know what the word is right now. Like, write and say what you mean to write and say, and you don't have to dress it up as something that it's not. The way that my friend Clifton says it, he says like it is like a tree with less ornaments. We all know Christmas trees, and you can fill that thing with ornaments, and really the tree never looks so beautiful as when it's just bulbs on the tree, meaning to say that if you want to say something, sometimes you can just come out and say it, and it doesn't need to be eloquent, and it doesn't need to be the best written sentence, and people will get it, and people will nod their heads, and people will say, me too, I have been there before. And that is the power of really beautiful writing. The reason that this topic of voice came up for me is because I got an email from a reader one time, and they said to me, I wrote this piece for my teacher, and my teacher came back and said like, well, this is not like an everyday writer's voice, and this is not exactly how you would write in every day. And she was like, and I just don't understand that. But she used the example of how she said that she had gone to a party and she asked for a libation. And that the teacher was like, you can just ask for a drink. And I have to side and agree with the teacher because I don't know that I've ever been to a party where somebody has offered me a libation. If you have, let me know. I want to know who that person is throwing parties. I'm sure that they're a real fun person. But all that to say is that I think when we sit down to write, we think that our words have to be overly eloquent. We think that every sentence needs to sparkle and shine. And a lot of times our reader is not looking for that. And a lot of times those words stand in the way of us actually, they stand in the way of us actually telling the story. Our words can get in our own way. If we want to spend all this time describing the leaves and we don't even care about the leaves, then don't waste our time with it. There are some authors that love description. There are some authors that love feelings and emotions. There are some authors that love dialogue. Me, I love dialogue. I could do dialogue all day, every day. I don't really care how the leaves look. And so I'm probably only going to put one sentence about the leaves. And that's okay because that's my voice. But the only way in which you're going to figure out how you have to say something is by you sticking close to your words and figuring out the way that you say things. In the blog post that I wrote about the girl that got offered a libation, I shared a personal story about a blogger that she and we started blogging around the same time, and I would read her words and she would read my words. But more and more, every time that I went to go onto her blog, I started to notice that she was kind of using my style and then using the way that I punctuated things, and then started to use similar words to me. And like more and more, the words started sounding exactly like me. And I had multiple people email me and tell me like, hey, I read so-and-so's blog, but lately I feel like you're the one writing the blog. Like she's mimicking your voice right now. Now, that's not like an easy thing to call out. That's not something I ever wanted to call out, but it kept happening. And it was happening over and over and over again, that I asked if we could jump on the phone and I asked if we could talk. And in that, I just said, listen, like, I love you. I care about you. I have to ask this question, even though it's an uncomfortable question to ask, but I just have to ask, like, are you copying me? Are you writing in my style? And I was expecting her to be like, no, I'm just inspired by you, this and that. But she came right out and she told me like, yes, I have been hijacking your voice. I realized that it was really easy to imitate your voice if I just practiced it. And so I got really good at it. And so because I don't know what my voice is, it just seems easier to like steal somebody else's voice. And we had a really honest conversation that day. It was a lot of breakthroughs. But I realized that I am just as vulnerable to fall into that same trap of reading an author that I really like and then mimicking them and acting just like them and writing just like them. And the thing is, one, you're not just doing a disservice to that author, you're doing a disservice to yourself. Because in order to find your voice, you have to go out and you have to live life and you have to talk to people on the streets and you have to live really good stories, and you need to come back and you need to write them down. If you look at an author and you like the way they write and then you decide that you are just going to mimic the way that they write things, you are basically in essence coming in and saying, hey, I don't respect your way of getting these words. I don't respect your voice. I am just going to hijack your process, and I'm going to hijack my own at the same time. That is something I want to have every person in the world steer clear of if they possibly can. If you feel very close or drawn to a writer that you feel like you are mimicking them at the end of the day, I would say take a little bit of distance, take a little bit of time, maybe read something else, maybe write a little bit more than you're reading right now so that you can figure out what it is that you have to say. You have a unique voice, and it is the sum of all the things you've gone and done and experienced. And I want you to be able to find that voice and capture that voice and live out of that voice. But the thing that will stand in the way is if you just try to spend your best energy imitating somebody else who's already had success, or somebody else who's already written all the books because you want to be just like them. The world doesn't need another J.K. Rowling. It doesn't need another Elizabeth Gilbert. It doesn't need another C.S. Lewis, Bonhoeffer, none of them. The world needs you, and the world needs your voice. It is a lie if you ever believe the thing inside of you that you have nothing to say and that the world doesn't need your experiences and your stories, because they are completely 100% unique to you. And so what you need to be able to do is be willing to sit down and dedicate yourself to the craft in order to figure out what you have to say. So we are going to take a 5-minute break. We are coming back here at 1:28 or just 28 for whatever time zone that you guys are in. It's going to be 5 minutes. I'm turning off the mic and I'm turning off the video screen for just a few minutes. So don't freak out if an icon just shows up. We're going to be back in 5 minutes, and we are digging into the storytelling process. So let me know how you're doing in the chat box, and we'll be back in just a few minutes. Coming back at you. Oh my gosh. I think somebody had said that they were getting a libation, which I love so much. Okay. I hope that you guys are enjoying the first half of the class. It's crazy that we have been here for an hour and a half. I always find that throughout this class, I become haggard looking. So I apologize because there's no time to go like redo makeup or anything. It's just really, we're going straight talking. We're getting into it. We're digging deep. So for anybody that wonders, like, well, we did a lot of heavy lifting in terms of just sitting down and writing. The reason for that is because a lot of times that's the biggest anvil in our way, is just actually sitting down and actually starting to write. And I found that a lot of the things that I thought I needed to know about being a writer naturally fell away when I just actually sat down and started to dig deeper into the words. And if you are somebody who has already written a book before, like I know Everett out there, he's written a book, like any inspiration, anything you want to add to the chat box, please add it up. Let's use the people that have been there, that have done it before. So we are getting into the story part of the class. This is specifically for you digging deep, whether you have an inkling of an idea of the book that you want to write, or you're working on your second book, or you have a fiction idea. Keep all of this in mind when you are digging through these points. So this number 11, this point that we're about to dig into, this is more of an active point. This is kind of a little activity that we're going to do. Super fun. So I'll shut up during it. But it says right here, number 11, one sentence, one paragraph. And so I want to challenge you guys. This is not something you have to share if you don't want to share. If you do want to share it, go for it. But take out your notebook or open to this page of the notes. What I want you to do is I want you to attempt to sum up your book or your idea for a book in one sentence. One sentence. I'm going to give you a few seconds to do that. So even if you're like, I don't have the most concrete idea, I think every one of us has some sort of idea of something that we want to work out or put into fruition. So what would be that idea in one sentence? I know one sentence is really hard and difficult. That's the point of it. It's supposed to be hard. Okay. And so we won't dig into this second part of the exercise, but it's kind of homework for you to do afterwards, is to take that one sentence and to expand that into a paragraph. And so a paragraph would basically be like the synopsis of the book that you're going to write. What are the key points? What are the things that you are going to dig deeper into? And so I always say, if you don't know where to start, if you're like, I don't even know how to tell this story, how would you sum up this story in one sentence? And then how would you expand upon that in the back of the novel? I mean, back of the novel, back of the nonfiction. When people go to the bookstore and they read the back of the book, there's a reason why they read the back of the book. It's because they want to know what the book is going to be about, and they want to know if it's going to be a personal fit for them. And so we need to do the justice of writing that back cover and then making sure we nail those points throughout our writing process. The reason I say, what is the story in one sentence? Because whatever the story is in one sentence should be the main point that we are consistently circling back to in our different chapters, in our different sections, in our different home run points. Okay, so number 12, This is the 3-act structure. And so for anybody that ever wonders, like, there are 1,001 ways in which to write a book and write it more powerfully. But one of the best ways to write a book and write a plot line is through what they call a 3-act structure, which is how most classic plays are often written. They're written through 3 acts. And so I have an article here that I'm going to post into the chat box because it is a fantastic article. And that's something that you guys can dig into, but it kind of gets into the ways in which the 3-act structure works. If you want to click into the link, it gets really in depth about it. But there's a little diagram that talks about how in Act 1, you do the beginning, you have that inciting incident, you have the second thoughts that lead into the climax of Act 1, which if you've ever gone and seen a Broadway play, you will see this 3-act structure work itself out in so many classical plays and in so many novels, so many movies. So you have the climax, you have the middle point, there's a climax of Act 2, and then what it leads into is basically a denouement or a wrap up. And so if you go through this article, what you're going to notice is that it's very similar to the hero's journey. If you ever wonder how to tell a good and effective story, just look up the term hero's journey. I get into it in my first writing intensive, and I wish that I had all the time in the world to cover it right here. But it is such a good guiding light for when you are writing fiction, nonfiction, of how to set up a story and what are the elements in each story. And so in this 3-act structure, there are 3 main things that we really need to focus on: the turning point, the climax, which is where everything kind of comes to a head, and the denouement, which is the way in which everything wraps up, the way in which things tie up into a bow. And the thing about that is that you don't have to tie things up into a bow. That is not something that absolutely has to happen. Turning points definitely need to happen throughout a book. Climaxes definitely are going to increase the likelihood that your reader is going to read on with you if things are happening in the book. The denouement is it is the wrap up, but it doesn't have to look like, and then everything fell into place, and then everybody lived happily ever after, because everyone that has lived a human life knows it's not always how it works. We don't always live happily ever after. I always say, if you've ever read the book, The Bell Jar by Sylvia Plath, there's really not a denouement at the end of that. It really just kind of is like a really crazy story, and it just kind of ends on just kind of a crazy note. Some authors choose to include an epilogue at the end of their book, and that kind of serves as a denouement of how everything comes full circle. And a lot of times authors just do that so that people get closure, and so that the story ends, that people don't have to wonder. Other authors choose to let people kind of write the endings of what they think is going to happen. So denouement is definitely, to me, it's not as vital as making sure that there is a turning point and making sure that there is a climax in your story. So then number 3 right here is the index card method. It should actually be number 13 on your notepad. And so this is something that I do for book writing, specifically when I am stuck on where to start, is to take every single point that you want to make, every single thing that you event that you want to have happen, and to write them out onto an index card. That doesn't mean that you use one index card. It's an index card for every single scene that's going to happen, every single turning point that's going to happen, every little thing that you can imagine is going to happen in your story. Write them into single index cards and place them all out in front of you. And then you can start to sort them and move them around and figure out where they fit throughout the story and how everything plugs into one another. So anybody that's like, man, I'm stuck You can do this in the middle of your writing process. You can do this after the book has already been written. After my first book got written, my editor wanted me to move things around. And so I went back and I did the index card method, even though all of the writing had already been done, so that I could look at it from like a 10,000 foot view and say, okay, we can move this over here. We can move that over here. This can come over here. But I'm telling you, write every single point, write every single turning point, every pivotal scene, and then start to work with it in that way. So you figure out what bleeds into what and what ties into what. As Johanna said, it's a simple and a smart method. It's simple and smart. And when you think that it might be tedious work, like just sitting down and starting to do the thing, like I promise you, your brain will switch into the gear where it will start to plan, and you will just start to stack things into place. So for some of you, you're going to want to do that before you write the book. For some of you, you might do that when you're stuck in the book writing process. For some of you that are think, I don't even know if I have a story to tell, that is when the index method will become vital to you. So that bleeds into point number 14. Anybody that has done my writing intensive, you know what I'm talking about when I say tentpole moments. So I'm going to draw out this little diagram for you guys so that you see it. It's probably going to likely be backwards because we're on a screen here. Yeah. Okay. So you see it says right there, A, B. That is your job as an author, is to bring your reader from point A to point B. And that middle space is all the time in which you have to make that character a different character. That's the whole point of writing things. That's the whole point of developing characters, is that the character would become somebody different by the end of the story. That's why we sign up for these things. That's why we watch these things, because we love character development. I'm not going to put any spoilers out there, and this has nothing to do with the book, but you guys knew I was going to make some Stranger Things references. But character development at its finest is the fact that in season 1, we all hated Steve from Stranger Things. And now in season 2, everybody's like, I love Steve. Don't touch Steve. Steve is my favorite character. That right there is character development. He started out as one person and he is developed into an entirely different person by a series of events. Now, what your readers want to read is those series of events that change a person, that harden a person, that make a person resilient, that keep that person pushing. For every single character that you write into a book, you want to identify what that character's inner motor is. That inner motor is, what is that thing driving you? If you are the main character, what is the thing driving you? If your main character is named Emily, what is driving Emily? Because that is the thing that readers are going to identify with. And they are going to want to see that character win or lose, depending on if they are a hero or a villain. But right here, point A to point B, in the middle of that is going to be your tentpole moments. I always say your tentpole moments are the things that change you, they shape you, they shift you, they transform you. If you are sitting here today being like, I know I want to write a book, I know it's something I want to do, I don't know where to begin, I'm really freaking out, I don't know if there's a story inside of me, I would challenge you to sit down and to write down your tentpole moments. What are the things that have changed you? What are the things that have shifted you? Those are the things that are going to be important and vital to write about in this book. So if it's something where it's like, say, if you find this letter, which this was the first book that I wrote, I knew the period of time that I was working with, and what was my job was to figure out from the time that book started to the time that story ended, what are the things that shaped me, changed me, made me into a different character, and how can I best flesh those things out and write those things out. And just a quick tip that doesn't fit into this at all is that the most important thing that I think we can do as writers is instead of telling people what those things are, showing people those things, allowing people to figure those things out on their own, not just coming through and said, well, this changed me. The reader is going to know if you're telling it that it's important, that it plays a role, but like for you to do the justice of putting us into the scene. And so write down those tentpole moments. If anybody wants to be active in the chat box, let us know off the top of your head one tentpole moment that you know right here, right now is important. It matters. It's a tentpole moment for you. There's probably going to be anywhere from like 10 to 12 to 14 tentpole moments, things that have changed you. Leah said, motherhood, my main life-changing happenings. Exactly. That right there, becoming a mother. And if you take that topic of motherhood, you can break that into a dozen tentpole moments. Motherhood might be the overarching theme, and it might be having the first child, the baby walking for the first time. I'm not a mother, so I can't really like get into all of these like details because I don't know what the tentpole moments of motherhood are yet. I will develop them and discover them on my own. But somebody who just said depression. Yes, depression. Finding a psychiatrist was a tentpole moment for me. Starting medication was a tentpole moment for me. And I could come at you and I could tell you, and then I started medication, or I could place you in the scene and I could show you how it felt, and I could show you where I was standing. And I could tell you the things that happened to me or the pivotal moments that I had. And so sometimes even when you're thinking about a concept of like, oh, well, I want to be able to clearly articulate this concept, how could you show that rather than just talk about that concept? How can you place somebody in the story to be able to nod their head and say, me too, I've been there too? That is the beautiful thing about writing, is that the story doesn't have to be the exact same for somebody to be able to nod their head and say, I've been there, I've felt that, I've had that moment too. And I think that that's the reason that I love writing, is because we're able to pull one another closer through our thoughts and our experiences by placing people into a scene. And so number 15, it says right there on the notes packet, every scene needs. Here are the 3 things that every scene needs. 1, if you're writing your notes, every scene needs something to happen. It seems so, I mean, that's like the wisest thing we've said all day. But it's like if you're watching a play, they create a scene because something is going to happen. Something must happen. Number 2, every scene needs something to change. Could be a little change, it could be a big change, but something's got to shift, something's got to change. So every scene needs something to happen, every scene needs something to change, and every scene needs, drum roll, someone to grow. Someone has to grow in some capacity in every single scene. And I'm telling you, you can go to your books, you could go to your favorite TV shows, you can watch every single scene and you will realize that this is happening right here in front of us. Something is happening, something is changing, someone is growing. It could be that they are growing in a bad way. They're becoming malicious, they're becoming spiteful, they're becoming mean, but someone is growing in some capacity. So those are the 3 things. Every scene needs something to happen, something to change, someone to grow. Doesn't all have to be life shifting, doesn't all have to be like big fireworks moments, but these are the things that guide a reader along. And number 16, become a sadist. This is from Kurt Vonnegut. But basically it is like knowing, especially when it comes to fiction, that you in a way get to play God a little bit with your characters. I don't want to get too deep into that because that could get really weird. But in a sense, like you get to control what happens to these characters. You get to kill characters off. You get to get characters to do really awful, mean, awful things. And I'm not saying like those are the stories that you have to write, but it's also incredibly important to know when we write fiction that like we are not living in a world full of rainbows and butterflies. And anybody in the room that watches This Is Us, I'm on like a TV show rant right now because I feel like This Is Us could be like a series of novels that we would all read and cry over and like literally like lose our minds over Milo Ventimiglia. But This Is Us, the reason that I love This Is Us, and me and my mom, we jump on the phone and we talk about it consistently, is because we are not in control of those characters. There are a million and one things that we wish those characters would do differently, do better. But the reason we like it is because it's real. It's because those characters at the end of the day are not there to please us. This is real life. And so when I say become a sadist, I mean like inject real life into your stories. Families are really jacked up and dysfunctional. Love stories don't always last. Cinderella moments don't always happen. Disappointment can be at every single corner. And to write about those things isn't to be depressing, isn't to be like somebody who's like, whoa, my life is awful. It's just to be real, to know that like there are a lot of ugly and wonderful and beautiful things in this world. But like this idea that it all works out and that we always have all the answers, like I just don't believe that that is true. And when you watch This Is Us, you like feel it because you're like, oh, Kate, I wanted you to do something different. Oh, Randall, shut up. But like, that's not the way it works. And that's the way that you will know you're being a good writer if your readers want your characters to do something different and they surprise them and they change and they do something different. Like, that's real life. And you, in a sense, when you write, get to play God a little bit. You don't get to play God when you do nonfiction. And so I want to warn somebody in the room today is that you have to be really careful when you write nonfiction because nonfiction has to be true. So you can't pull one of those like A Million Little Pieces, the guy that got like exposed on Oprah because he made up half of his story. If you're writing nonfiction, your biggest loyalty is to be true to the facts and the stories that you know to be true. That's your biggest thing. And you can't make up dialogue that a person said when they didn't say it. You can't claim to know a person's thoughts and emotions and feelings when you don't actually have ownership of those things. And so I write about, or I talk about it in my writing intensive. I talk about the art of Taylor Swifting and being really careful when you write about other people, because you as the writer, you have to be the first person to go to the chopping block. You can never claim to say, I know why this person did this. I know all the things they did afterwards. That's not your job as a writer. You can only vouch for your feelings and your thoughts and how you showed up in that story. And, you know, it's okay to say, hey, I wish I'd been a stronger character. I wish I'd been a braver character. It's okay to admit those things. I think the best thing that we can do as authors and writers is to be vulnerable, is to be real with people, is to say, hey, I wish it ended this way, but it really ended that way. And that's just the truth. And that is the reality. So somebody said disclaimers, basically. And one of the things to remember too is when you are writing nonfiction, because of stories like A Million Little Pieces, they basically put a disclaimer. They put a warning at the front of every book that's memoir and nonfiction now that says like, this story is built to the best of the writer's ability on dialogues and things that they remember. And that's because memory is a really tricky thing. We could get into a whole class on that. But really, your biggest goal, apart from telling beautiful stories, is to make sure that you tell the truth. At all costs, tell the truth and let that truth guide you. Okay, the next point is number 17. It's very clear and simple. Use my time wisely. Meaning, if I am the reader, use my time wisely. Tell me the things that matter. Bring me on the journeys that matter. Don't just fill a page for word count. That's been one of the things that's been challenging for me in the last few days of writing for NaNoWriMo, the National Novel Writing Month, is that it's easy to say, okay, you know what, I could waste 200 words describing this, and then I would hit my word count. And I've tried my hardest to avoid doing that for the simple fact that it's like, I value the time of my reader, and you should value the time of your reader. If you are expecting your reader to sit down and read that book for what, 3, 4, 5 hours, use their time wisely. Pack that time full. Give them the necessary things that they need to know and not a sentence more. I remember my first editor had said to me after my first draft was written, and it was a long draft. I mean, it was like 100,000 words or something, and we cut like so many words because I had so many things to say. But I remember her coming to me and she just said, you know, I could be really wrong, but I think that you're hiding behind a lot of pretty words when you could just come out and tell me how you really feel. And that was like a punch in the gut for me, because it was completely true, is that I wanted everything to seem articulate and eloquent. And really, I could have come out in one sentence and said, that hurt, or I'm still not over that. and people would have got it and they would have understood it at that moment. And so using the reader's time wisely, and if you don't care about the things you're writing, then probably it's not necessary for you to include it. Number 18, place me there. We talked about this a little bit, so we'll just drive it home, is that it's just so much more proactive to place people into a scene rather than to tell somebody something. You could have chances and moments to preach at people and to really just like drive the points home. But the way in which my editor has taught me to sculpt my stories, especially nonfiction, is to place people right in the scene, to let the story play out, and then to kind of gather everybody around for that we moment. So it starts with an I, and then it becomes a we. It goes from I to we, I to we. And most powerful stories have the capacity to do that, is that you're watching the character in action, but it becomes a we moment. It becomes a me too moment. And so one of the best things that we can do is to choose to place people into those scenes with us. Tell me how it looks. Tell me how it feels. Tell me what it smells like. Tell me the distinctive details that are going to cause me to remember what that room looked like or what that hospital room felt like. In my most recent book, the one that's coming out in May, there was one specific scene that I wrote about going to the hospital, being hospitalized for depression. And one of my friends that read the book in advance to kind of give me feedback, she said that was one of her favorite scenes. And I feel like it was like you're injecting somebody into that moment. You are letting them walk through the walls of the hospital with you. You are letting them see the moment where you have to take your clothes and exchange your clothes for like clothes that they're going to make you wear and socks that they make you wear, and this very sterile environment, and the things that the doctor says and the things that you're just not understanding in that moment, and the way it feels to lay on that bed in the quiet room and the crinkly sheets. All of those things bring somebody right into a moment that's more powerful than saying, I went to the hospital and I was scared out of my mind. Place me there. Let me feel it too. Let me have my full range of emotion. It is all okay to be all sorts of emotional. You are allowed to have that. You are allowed to give your readers that. And number 19, just when we are in our writing process, people always ask me the question, okay, well, like, when do I know to stop? Like, how do I know when to stop? And like, I'm afraid I'm going to write all my words, and then the next day I'm going to show up and I'm not going to know where to start again. So sometimes the best suggestion that I can give, that I do with myself every single day, is when I know I'm on a roll and I'm kicking it and I'm hitting my word count, I will stop right in the middle of me being on a roll, which might seem counterintuitive. But what happens is that I know right where to pick up and right where to begin the next day. And that is how I keep my content flowing, is that I'll leave myself with a little cliffhanger so I can go in and I can easily slip back into my own story. Somebody just said in the chat box, Sarah said, what's amazing is that the more specific the details, the more universal the story. Yes, that is incredibly true. I used to think that I had to write broad if I ever wanted people to want to read me or want to understand me. But what I find is that when we inject our personal details into the story, people get transported there. People feel like they relate to that. People have been in that spot before. And so tell all your personal details and personal stories. I want to do a fun activity right now. It's kind of fun for me, but it will just show you how different our stories are and how crazy that the little details can be. And so I want you to think right now about a scene that you know you need to write. Whether it's fiction or it's nonfiction, you have a scene in your head. I want you to think for a minute about it. Maybe close your eyes if you want to. I don't know. I just started closing my eyes. Think about that scene. Wherever you've been taking notes this whole time, write down a few specific elements of that scene. Close your eyes if you have to, because you'll remember things that you didn't remember before. Remember the physical objects. Remember the smells. Remember the tangible things. Utilizing our chat box, because I love utilizing the chat box. Write type one of those nouns into here. One of those nouns, whether it was the yellow sweater or it was the Christmas lights or it was the copy of The Catcher in the Rye. You don't have to explain anything. Just include the tangible thing in the chat box. And you will see how different it looks. Gosh, this is like my favorite exercise in the world because you read people's responses and you're like, what is that? What do you mean? Salty tears, bare feet on the carpet, stale breath, snake on the ground, camouflage, brown zebra blanket, AstroTurf and stadium lights, the burnt orange stained couch, the taste of stale cigarettes and spearmint. Guys, lean into one another. I will tell you that right now. If there is somebody in this room that you're like, I want to know what that story is, message them after this class. Ask them, what the heck was up with the AstroTurf? Tell me about that. Tell me about the taste of stale cigarettes and spearmint. Tell me about the crowded room of college students, the winding sidewalks. This is the stuff of good stories because it makes us think of other stories. And that is the cool thing about writing is that like you give people the permission to think and feel and recount things that they never thought that they could go back to. That is why you are a writer at the end of the day, because you get to say the things that people wish they had the words to say. It's all beautiful. Y'all rock so hard. Okay, so a few things that I want to say before we dig into the proposal section, because when I started the like going through and re-prepping the materials, I put into Facebook if anybody had any initial questions, and somebody asked about the editing process. So I want to say a few things about the editing process because I realize as writers, this is one of the most daunting things is when the words have been written, when am I supposed to go back and edit? And how do I go back and edit when I hate everything that I have written? If you hate everything that you've written after you've written it, like congratulations, you are completely 100% normal. We have all been there before. I hate the editing process. Half the times I want to change everything. And I think it's like one of those things that we have to become okay with is that like we may never be 100% confident in our work, and that's okay. That just means we're not narcissists at the end of the day. I don't know. So the first thing that I would say about editing, number one, let it lay, meaning when you finish something, whether it is a big chapter, whether it is an entire book, let it lay for a few days. Walk away for a few days. Take a breath, come back to it with fresh eyes. Number two, go through and do yourself the service of eliminating your crutch words. We all have crutch words. They are words that we say over and over and over again without even realizing it until we go back and we look at a draft and we're like, oh my gosh, I start every single sentence with well or so. Or, oh my gosh, like I am constantly using that phrase of speech. And like, oh my gosh, like one of the things that I had to become like aware of in my own writing is that when I'm writing a lot of things and I'm writing dialogue, I tend to use people's names a lot. And I had to determine, okay, which ones of my characters actually say somebody's name when they're talking to them and which of them don't, because not every single one of us in dialogue uses each other's names as frequently as when we write it out. Number three, don't edit while you write. In a writing session, my advice would not be to go back and edit while you are writing. Just allow yourself to write. Just allow the words to get out. Allow yourself to be in that creative space. Go back and edit later. Throughout my book writing processes, I have split it up so that I would be doing writing in the morning and I would go back to edit at night. Editing took less of my brain energy than the creative process of writing. And so split those two up. Have an editing day, have an editing day, have a writing day. But I wouldn't include the two of them together only if you want to just like really relentlessly hate your words. And then number 4, print it out in portions. A lot of times what we write on a computer screen and then we edit on a computer screen, and it might seem simple, but like printing out a chapter and actually reading it like this will be a completely different experience. And you will catch things you didn't catch before. And it will transport you into a different mindset. And so allow yourself to read your words in different modes and mediums, whether that's in a PDF form, a document form, whether you transport it from your computer to your iPad. Let yourself read it in different mediums for you to get the fullness of the editing process. And just like I said before, editing, confidence, that is not the byproduct and the end product. It doesn't have to be at all. It's not the most important thing that you are gunning for. At the end of the day, you want to like the words that you write, but you don't have to be massively in love with them. And I only say that because every piece that I've ever written, I think I could go back and I could write that completely differently with new thoughts and new feelings and new perspective. That's the thing about writing, is that it's always going to be subject to change. So at some point we just have to say, it's finished. I'm putting a period on that, and we're moving forward. Okay, awesome. So, taking a drink for a second. Are you guys doing good out there? Because we're about to get into the proposal section. So if you thought you had material, you're going to have even more material. So I hope that is my goal for you guys, is that you are like, you have so much material, you almost don't know what to do with it. Like, I want to leave you full at the end of this class and processing things. And so hopefully if I do that, then my mission is accomplished. To have you guys have so many notes and have to be like, well, I have to go back and like watch that class again because there's just so many things and I want to soak up every last thing. So open up to the proposal section. Okay. Whew. So what goes into a classic book proposal? Let's talk about the book proposal. This is especially for the people in the room that are writing nonfiction, because you can actually write a book proposal before you write the whole entire book. You can actually sell a book proposal and people can give you an advance to write your book. And so especially with nonfiction, book proposals are extremely vitally important. I have written several book proposals. I've gone back, written, rewritten. Fun fact about my second book, I was ready to start writing that book the second that I handed in my first book. And I remember I sat down for my first writing day, the day after I handed in that book. And I started writing and I was just on a spree, but then I just kept hitting a wall and I kept hitting a wall. And I had to have like a reality check with myself where I realized, wait a minute, like, I can't actually write this book yet because I haven't actually fully lived this book yet. And that's the case in nonfiction, is that I wanted to write about all these beautiful, wonderful concepts, but I didn't learn them for myself. And so what is the point of teaching somebody else if I've not actually lived the experiences? And so while I was ready to write book 2 right after book 1, it took me about a year and a half to get that proposal out into the world. I had written a whole entire book proposal and then had to go back to my agent and say, hey, I have to start over because this is not the book that I set out to write. So anybody that's wondering about book proposals, they vary in length. It can be anywhere from 20 pages to 30 pages to my book proposals have classically been usually 50 to 60 pages, which feels like its own book. And that's because in a lot of ways it kind of is. But I am going to give you the meat of everything that goes into a book proposal. So let me know that you're ready and we're just going to dig in. Whew, I need water. I have to stop drinking coffee. Okay. So first thing that you need in a book proposal, maybe I can start to speak lower and enunciate my words or something. I don't know why I just spoke that way. Okay, the first thing that you need is you need an author bio. This is basically your about me page. It's who you are, it's where you've been, it's what you've done, it's all the things. And hey, like, this is your time to shine. This is your time to say, well, I got published here, or I did this. And so don't downplay yourself. But it's also a time to get personal and talk about what you love and what makes you you. This is your time. This is your author bio. You can write this informally and make it kind of be like an introduction of like, hi, my name is Hannah and I live in Atlanta, Georgia. Or it could be super formal if you want it to be super formal and be like, Mary lives in Atlanta, Georgia, and she has 3 children and a dog. And that's going to be the tone of your proposal, how you want it to be. And the thing that they won't tell you about proposals when you're Googling them online is that like you get the chance to play around with the proposal. You want to have this meat in there, but I'm encouraging you, like inject your voice, like be you in your proposal and structure things the way that you want to structure things. Use the fonts that you want to use, like inject your personality as much as humanly possible. So the first thing is the author bio. This should probably be about anywhere from like 2 paragraphs to a page about yourself. It doesn't have to be long. Usually I would tell people include a picture in the proposal so that they can see you. You could be smiling at them. It could be a headshot. Don't make it a selfie. Have somebody take a photo for you. Maybe a picture with your dog, your kids, whatever it is. Number 2, you're going to want to include an overview. And so the overview is basically like the executive summary of the book that you are writing. It will be anywhere from 2 to 3 pages, not longer than that usually. And so that's really like your clear cut. This is how I know I have a book to write because these are the main things that we're going to tackle in the book. This is the meat of the book. This is what we're getting into in the book. And so it's basically for the author to know, for the editor agent to know, okay, this is what this book is going to cover and tackle. These are the main points. Number 3 is going to be your chapter outline or section outline. In my personal experience, this is the one that takes the most time. This is usually the hardest one, is to know what's going to happen in every single chapter. The cool thing about this, creating an outline like this, is that when you go to actually sit down and write, you will have a map. And it will be amazing that you have an outline and you know the meat of every single chapter that you are getting into. If you cannot boil it down into chapters, you can do sections instead. For my first book proposal, I did 3 sections, very much like that 3-act play. And I think that my outline ended up being somewhere between 14 to 16 pages. So that's the real meat of it. That's the real proof, like, there is a book in me that needs to be written. I have thought this out. I have plotted this out. So we have the author bio, which is probably no more than 1 page. We have the overview, the 2 to 3 page summary. We have the chapter outline, which will be the biggest, meatiest part. And I would say that that's probably anywhere between 10 and 15 pages of what the chapters are about. What are the main stories that you're going to tell? You can like look this up online and see different samples of it. But I just kind of always drive through the who, what, where, when, how. What are the questions that I am answering in each chapter? And then what you're going to need in your sample proposal is you will need some sample chapters. So this is where you put your best foot forward, your best work forward. You will have to do some sitting down and writing in order to put the best work out there. But yes, sample chapters. Is someone said that the screen was frozen. Okay, fixed. Perfect. Awesome. I'm like, no, I don't want the screen to be frozen. So I would say anywhere from 1 to 2 chapters. It's really a way for agents and for editors to understand your tone of voice. And your agent might come back and say, hey, you need to rewrite this. I had to rewrite my sample chapters a bunch of different times. I would brace yourself for the process because this is a process. It is not for the faint at heart. It could go anywhere from 6 months to a year, but it's all worthwhile moments in which you are going to learn so much about yourself. Number 5 of what is going into this proposal is a competitive analysis. So that's basically saying, hey, here are the other titles out there in the world that could be similar or carry the same themes as my book, and here is how my book compares to them. So you've got to be willing to get nitty gritty with what books are already out there, what you're doing differently from them, and being willing to compare, well, this book is very much like eating animals, except I take a different approach than Jonathan, and I say it's actually good to eat animals. Like, that is the kind of competitive analysis that they want with several titles. I would challenge you to dig deeper if you get to the point where you're like, well, there's no book out there that's like my book. Dig a little bit deeper. There probably is. There's nothing new under the sun. And it's not to say that your book isn't going to be different and unique. It's just to say that, like, editors at the end of the day want to see who you are thinking would be competitive, why they want to know at the end of the day, like, will this book sell? And so who are you comparing yourself to? And what books out there do you know that have done incredibly well that you feel like you could add to that genre or add to that subject? Number 6, the market. And so that's kind of your demographic. Who are you going to be writing to? Who do you know that you are catering to? For me, I know that I am writing to a lot of young women. I can go on Instagram and see that I have 89% women following me and 11% men, but that statistic went up. I got a percentage of men more. But explain your demographic, explain your market. They want to know, can you hone in? Can you find the right people to write to? I think it would be a mistake to say when we're writing a book, this book appeals to everyone at large at any stage of life. Even if it does, even if it proves that way when it sells, I would say dig in and figure out, who are your people? Who are you writing to? Okay. Number 7, what are your plans? Your plans for rolling this book out. We are going to talk a little bit about platform. Platform is incredibly important when it comes to traditional publishing, but it's really like, okay, are you going to line up speaking engagements? How are you going to engage your readers? What are you planning to push out? What are you going to put forward? The publishing houses want to know that you are going to do the heavy lifting right alongside them. And so you have to be willing to list your action steps of what you plan to do if this book goes to market. So those are the 7 main essential things that are going into a book proposal: the author bio, the overview, the chapter outline or section outline, sample material, a competitive analysis, the market, and the plans for that book and how you are going to use your platform in order to do that. Any publisher out there is going to say you need to be actively building a platform. We don't like the word platform a lot of times. It feels icky. It doesn't feel like it has integrity to a lot of us, but really they just want to know, like, who are you giving this book to at the end of the day? And when we put ourselves in that framework, platform becomes a really important thing to discuss and talk about. The most common problems that they find with book proposals are, 1, that there actually isn't a market or a need, or that it's actually too small of a market, that it's more of a niche population, that there wouldn't be enough people to buy the book. Another problem is often that we go and we seek out the wrong agent. We look for somebody to represent our work that doesn't actually represent that genre or doesn't actually have expertise in that area. Another problem with our work is that we don't make it original. We make it exactly like the last 3 or 4 books that had been published on that topic. You got to ask yourself the hard questions of what makes my book original, what makes my book unique, what makes my book the thing that I have to create. Why should I be the one to write this book and nobody else? And then the last thing that sometimes makes a book proposal flop and fail is the lack of a platform. Platform matters. That's why we are going to dedicate some of our time to that. So the next meaty portion, if you open up to the page on the notes where it says notes on agents, notes on query letters, and notes on traditional versus self-publishing. That's usually people's main question. It's like, well, how do I go and find a literary agent? There is one thing that I want to share with you guys. I find this website to be really cool. It digs into what agents are looking for, and you might want to just check out this website because it is the manuscript wish list. You can click into the little caveats of agents and editors and publishers or literary assistants or editorial assistants. At the end of the day, if you want to go the route of traditional publishing, then you are looking for an agent at the end of the day. And the agent is going to be the person that is going to represent you to the publisher. It's basically going to be like your armor, your shield, the person that negotiates the deals, the person that is on your team at the end of the day. And so my biggest thing for you is to find an agent that represents your genre well. So you kind of have to know what your genre is. But the other thing that I would say is that you want an agent that at the end of the day wants to cheerlead for you and for your projects. You want them to be the loudest cheerleader in the room. And you don't want them to be the agent that says, okay, well, I want you to write this book for me if you'll change this, this, and this, and make it about their own agenda. You want an agent that is for you and for the work that you're putting out there and for your voice. Truth told, when I went into the process of writing my first book and I had literary agents reaching out to me, I said, you know what? I've wanted this process for a really long time. I've wanted a literary agent for a really long time since I was a little girl. Most little girls, they grow up dreaming about their wedding. I was dreaming about the literary agent that I was going to grow old with. And so instead of just taking the first literary agent that came to me, I went back and I looked through my notes of all the literary agents that I had admired, all the literary agents that I followed on Twitter, because you can literally find literary agents all over the internet. You can follow them. You can be engaged with the titles that they're putting out there in the world. And I went back and I decided to pitch some of those literary agents. I pitched them with what is called a query letter. So query letters used to be things that we would mail into editors and agents in order to try to get them to represent books. Now query letters happen via email. So I basically wrote a query letter to some of the agents that I really admired, that I wanted to represent me. I looked at their submissions guidelines on their websites. And I decided, okay, I'm going to bring more people into this conversation. And there was one literary agent specifically that I loved more than anything. And I thought, if she represents me, like, I will be the happiest person in the world. And I will tell you right now, maybe you should do everything the opposite of what I did in this process, because I really flew by the seat of my pants in this process. But I went onto her website. I saw her submission guidelines. It said that you send in a query letter and likelihood the response time would be 2 weeks. So I sent her a query letter that basically said, hey, this is the title that I'm creating. I have a book proposal. It's ready to go. It has sample material in it, blah, blah, blah. I sent it and I thought, okay, now I've got 2 weeks to write my book proposal. Well, she responded back to me in 4 hours, which actually was crazy. And she said that she wanted the book proposal as soon as possible. I had not written the book proposal. And so I took the next 72 hours to not sleep and write a book proposal. And I'm telling you, like, I started from the bottom and I went, now we here, like anything that I thought needed to go into a book proposal, wrote all my sample material, like threw it all together and mailed it over to her. I'm telling you, probably not to do that. She ended up loving the book proposal. But she ended up saying, if you would just change your voice, then I would probably want to represent you. She didn't like my voice. And so I did the thing that I will never, ever, ever be proud to say. I went in and I changed my voice. I just did, because I wanted her to represent me. I was like hungry for her to represent me. I changed everything. And I went back to her and I gave it to her again as a second try. And she said, great, like lots of great changes. But at the end of the day, like, I don't want you to change your voice. Your voice is valuable. Your voice is hitting a demographic that I know that you are meant to hit. And so what I want you to do is I want you to go out there and I want you to find somebody who's going to be a cheerleader for your work. And I'm going to be standing at the finish line cheering for you when that first book comes out. Guys, what's so crazy to me about that is that I was so willing to say, I will change whatever as long as you will accept me and take me. And what I ended up with is an agent that didn't want me to change my voice, that didn't want me to produce whatever they wanted me to produce. It was an agent that ended up being my cheerleader, and she has continued to be my cheerleader throughout book 1, book 2, book 3, and hopefully for the long future. And so when it comes to finding a literary agent, it is as simple as looking at the publisher's marketplace. It is being able to do the tedious work of looking at different literary agents, the genres that they represent. I would tell you, instead of looking for a specific agent first, look at different literary agents, literary agencies, and then look at the literary agents that are in their house, the people that they have selling the books for them. If you wonder where to start with that, pull out some of your favorite titles, some of your favorite books. Figure out where they're represented by. Most people will thank their literary agent in the acknowledgments of their books. Let's see. Because this book is sitting right here, I want to see if he has acknowledgments. This could actually be a bad example. He's got a lot. Here we go. See, right here, the first paragraph. He thanks Little Brown, which is his publishing home. And then he thanks who I believe is probably his agent, because he says, I want to thank Michael Peach for his early and enduring faith in eating animals. We could Google him and guaranteed you he's probably either the editor or the agent. And one of these names at the top is going to be his agent. So find books that you love, authors that you love, see who they're represented by, see the other literary agents at that house, find one that fits in your genre that's looking to represent work that's similar to your work. And then what you're going to do is you're going to write the query letter. Here's a few notes on the query letter. A query letter, you never want it to be more than a page. So write it in a Word document first. Make sure that it's never more than a page, because we all have lives at the end of the day and we can't spend all our days reading query letters. The first thing that you want to do in your first paragraph is you want to engage them with a hook. You want to hook them in. That's what we learned in our writing classes in 3rd and 4th grade, and it still applies here, is that you want to engage people in a hook. Why should they be reading your query letter and your manuscript before anybody else's? You engage them with a hook, you get into summarizing the story, and you add a short bio in. Those are your best things to include in a query letter. You hook them, you summarize the story, you give them the working title, and you add a short bio. A few more notes on the query letter: make it short sentences. They don't need to be long, winding sentences. Get short, get right to the point. Follow the submission guidelines. They will get steamed up and mad if you don't follow the submission guidelines. They want you to follow the submission guidelines. And if you stay in those guidelines, there is a much better chance that they will respond to you. They will reach back out to you. And so the way that it kind of works is that when you have a literary agent, then that literary agent will represent you to the publishing houses. So I wish I could say you get a literary agent and then immediately you are guaranteed a publishing deal. But what they will do is they will help you fine-tune your proposal, and then they will start to shop your proposal to publishing houses all over the place. And I used to be the person who thought, before I sold my first few books, that the most important thing in the world was the publishing house. I thought it was going to be a dream to be at this publishing house. I thought, this is like the best publishing house in the world. I need to be there. At the end of the day, the publishing house doesn't matter as much as the editor that is going to work with you at the publishing house. You want an editor that understands your story. You want an editor that understands your voice. That editor is going to work with you painstakingly back and forth to make you a better writer at the end of the day. And so if you get rejected from an editor, don't take that to heart too much, and make sure that you have a literary agent that is going to go back and is going to talk through the rejection with you. That's going to tell you the things that we could change or the things that we can improve. At the end of the day, the editor has to take on projects, maybe 2 to 3 projects every quarter that they are going to give their life to for the next few years. And so they have to be passionate about it. They have to want to represent it. They have to want to put their whole entire lives into this book. And so we can't always take it personally if we get rejected. Save those rejection letters. We can have a celebration later. Notes on traditional versus self-publishing. People always ask questions about this. Traditional publishing, I will say, it is a longer haul, but it is a more inclusive process, meaning that it will take longer for that book to come into print. People always like reply to me and are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe it's taking so long for your book to come out. Like, why couldn't they just speed up the process? There's a lot more steps that are involved in the traditional publishing route. If you can't wait, if you don't want to wait, then I would tell you to go self-publishing. But anybody that's self-publishing will say that in a lot of ways, you're on your own. You have to do a lot of heavy lifting on your own. You have to do a lot of marketing on your own. So each one has its own perks. When you are self-publishing, you're kind of like your own boss. You get to call the shots. You get to produce whatever you want to produce. When you are traditional publishing, you kind of have to bow more to what the editor wants or more to what the publishing house wants. You have to be able to work on a team with them, and you have to wait longer. Each one has its own perks, but the route of traditional publishing usually starts with the agent, spirals into the editor, goes into the marketing of a book, and then the release of the book, and then the determination of if you're going to do that again and again and again. I went through the route of traditional publishing, and I've really enjoyed it. It's a longer process, but I've also really liked working on a team and being able to learn as much as I possibly can learn, and having that experience of working with an editor. You have to be willing to do more work of the proposal and finding the agent and enduring the rejection. But at the end of the day, you ask yourself, what is the end goal? What am I pushing towards? What are my non-negotiables? What do I want more than anything? And how do I plan the attack from that? I'm telling you, dedication, persistence, determination are going to be the biggest assets on your team at this time. Whew. Hold on one second. I'm going to take a sip. Just a few questions. Somebody asked the question, what are the legal precautions to take when reaching out to an agent protecting your work? I don't think that I've ever taken many legal precautions with that. So that'd be something to dig into more. Usually what you're doing when you are querying to an agent, you are not querying specifically the actual full manuscript unless it's fiction. What you are querying more than anything is the book proposal itself. And so the full body of work has either A, not been written, or two, it won't be enclosed in all of that. So it is the idea in essence that you are shopping. And another thing is that most of the submission guidelines are going to tell you, I don't want you to just send me your proposal in that initial query letter. What you're going to do is say, hey, I have a book proposal for this specific title, and I would love to send it over to you. And they will be able to respond back to your email and tell you yes, send it over, or hey, sorry, at this time, I can't look it over. And some might reach out to you and say, hey, yes, I'd love to see it, and come back and say, hey, it's actually, it's not a title that I think I could work with at this time. And so that initial dialogue won't start until they tell you that they want to see your literary proposal. Someone said, for nonfiction, do you need permission from real parties involved to tell the story? It depends on how much that character's in the story and what stories you're telling about them. There is a thing such as changing identifying details and changing names. When you change the names, unless it's somebody close, like a husband or a father, you don't necessarily have to get permissions. And then in some cases, you will want to get permissions from people if you know it's delicate, sensitive material. You will have to go through the route of doing that. In some cases, though, some people would not give you permission to write the things, and you will work with your agent and your editor to figure out what to do with those characters and how best to proceed forward. Does the chapter outline for fiction include spoiler information? Yes. You can tell any spoilers in your chapter outlines, because at the end of the day, it's not about a cliffhanger when you're doing the outline. It's more so, what is the story and how am I going to be revealing it to my readers as I go from chapter to chapter to chapter. Someone said, what is the financial commitment with traditional publishing? Also a good question. And so usually with traditional publishing, you will get an advance to write your book. That advance will vary from single digits to double digits to anything. It's different from first-time authors to people that have written several books. If you have a literary agent as your middleman, typically the literary agent will take 15%. It changes sometimes. And that 15% is basically to say, hey, you're getting into the avenues where you're going to be in bookstores and you're going to be in all these different places. And so that 15% is for the representation. And so in self-publishing, you don't have to make that financial commitment, but you have to put the money front to print the books. So those are some of the few questions. We are going to dig a little bit into platforms, and then we're getting into question and answers. I cannot believe that we have been talking for this long. We're going to take like legitimately a 2-minute break. I'm not even going to turn off the microphone or the video thing. I'm legitimately just going to go over here and get water so I don't lose my voice. And we are coming back in 2 minutes to talk platform. So get ready for that. How we doing, guys? Whew. There's been so many words that I've said. So hopefully this has been informative for you, that you guys have taken a lot of notes. You ask your questions in the chat box, because we're going to go into the question and answer section in just a few minutes. We're going to do one final little section on platform. And then, yeah, we're going to dig into a few minutes of question and answer. So platform, just a few points that I want to make about platform, because I have talked about the importance of platform, why it matters, why publishers, if you are going the traditional publishing route, they're going to want to talk platform with you. And that's because they want to just make sure they're not doing the heavy lifting by themselves. And so we don't have to be scared of platform. We don't have to be like, that's an icky word, I don't want to talk about it. It's really just your presence on the internet, really, is where your platform exists. It's if you have readers, it's if you have a social media following. I want to say right here and right now, you do not need to have the biggest platform in the world. That is not the goal. That's not what they're looking for. I specifically had an author that my literary agent reached out to me about, and she said, hey, so she's on the verge of getting a book deal, but the publisher wants to know if she can build a platform. And so she and I jumped on a phone call. I gave her all the wisdom I could possibly give her in a half hour's time. And she built the makings of a platform and built a plan for how she was going to grow and expand that platform. And she ended up getting a book deal from it. So it wasn't that they wanted her to have 100,000 million followers. They just wanted to know, will you do the work? Will you build the platform? So a few points about platform. Number 20. the benefits of a blog. So usually when we talk about platform, we're either talking about a website or a blog that people can come back to and they can continually read your words. The benefits of a blog, I would say, is that people start to understand and hear your voice. They start to crave the words that you're writing. They start to have a place that they can go back to continually soak up your words. That to me is the benefit of a blog, is that you figure out what you have to write. You consistently allow yourself to push towards that craft and better that craft. At the end of the day, you don't have to set out to be the world's best blogger, but you have a hub for people to come back to. And that's incredibly important when it comes to a publisher, because a publisher is going to wonder at the end of the day, okay, so where are we going to market this book? Are you going to blog about the book? Where are you going to put the book? Where are you going to tell people that the book is coming out? Where is your home on the internet? And so I think that blogs are very beneficial for that reason, and that reason alone, that you figure out who your readers are, you gain a readership, and you get to continually keep them updated on what's happening, what's going on, what's the news with you. And that's just a cool relationship that you get to have with your readers that will grow and expand throughout the years. So the thing is, I always say, if you're going to build a website, build it like you want to build a home. What are the things that you want to tell people about you? What are the things that you want people to know? What are the elements that are important? What is the content that you want to put out there? You can put as much or as little work as you want to into building that home. But I always say home building rather than a platform, because I think at the end of the day, like, I don't need to be on a pedestal. I don't need to be on a platform screaming down to everyone. What I want more than anything is for everybody to just come hang out in my living room, and we could talk about life and talk about goals and talk about what we want out of our lives and our dreams. And those are the things that I try to portray and get across in my book. And so why I call it home building is because I hope I can do the same thing on my website and my blog. I hope I can welcome people into my home and show them my favorite things, and they get to understand my personality in a way that's unique and it's intimate and it's real. I also say platform building is incredibly important for the fact that when you meet somebody at a cocktail party, you can tell them all your great ideas. You can shake their hand. You can impress them and wow them with your face-to-face interactions. But when it's 2 a.m. and somebody is Googling on a topic, that's going to be where you can meet people and invite them into your home via your website and your blog. You can't go and meet people at 2 a.m. in their living rooms when they're Googling about this, that, or something else. But that's when your blog can step in. And that's when your words could step in to help them gain more knowledge, gain more wisdom, become a better person, whatever the end goal and the agenda is. And so I always tell people, above all things, silence the numbers. This is not a numbers game. This is not about how you have to get 500 people to your blog every single day. If you make it about the numbers, you will surely kill your desire. In the same way that if you look at Instagram and you say, well, I just need 1,000 followers or I just need 2,000 followers, at the end of the day, what we are doing is we are objectifying other people in the sense that those are living people that are watching your content, that are soaking up the words that you have to say. And so if the number gets larger, I say the mantle gets heavier on our lives to steward and guide those people well. So at the end of the day, people are never going to be a platform. People are never going to be numbers. Those are people that you are meant to invest in and engage with and celebrate and push forward and be a catalyst. And so silencing the number, being like, at the end of the day, it's not about having a certain number of blog hits or having a certain number of followers. It is about being dedicated to the craft and the discipline of the craft and putting out their content that the world actually needs. Someone says, how do you build a platform without losing your soul? I find the whole follower thing to be highly stressful and uncomfortable. We've now entered the day and age where followers on social media seemingly mean more than anything else. I can completely 100% agree with you, Kendall. And the only way that I have ever learned to squash this is to realize at the end of the day that maybe everybody around me is going to talk about followers and they're going to talk about numbers and stuff. That doesn't mean that I have to talk about the same thing. I live by the motto, do for one what you wish you could do for all. And so the person that's emailing me, they become my main priority. And the people that are in my Instagram messages for the day, those are the people that I'm going to respond back to. And I find that when I have those conversations and I finish strong and I finish well, then more is given to me the next day. But I also say practicing boundaries is a really incredible thing for this, is that you don't want to give all of your precious hours of your day to building a platform. But if you dedicate 15 minutes a day or an hour a week or 2 hours a week to the ways in which you think you can effectively build your platform and invest in your readers, you will find that the thing won't swallow you whole. The reason that the thing swallows people whole is because they start to care about followers more than they care about giving their followers anything worth following. And so what I would tell you is that even though the world wants you to care about followers, be somebody worth following. Build into that before you build into needing a certain amount of numbers to give you value and to give you worth. Okay. Somebody says, does Facebook count as a part of a platform? Yes, Facebook does count as part of a platform. And it is important. I think this person said it here. They said, how do we recover from voicing seemingly unpopular opinions? I shared a political article earlier this year, and I feel like I lost friendships and credibility, honestly. I think it's important to be honest on our platforms, to voice what we feel like we need to voice and to voice our convictions. At the same day, we have to be open to the fact that not everybody is going to agree with us. And we have to act, I say, the way that we would act at a dinner table. And I'm like, if you would not be comfortable doing that at a dinner table, then I caution that you would do it on the internet. That at the end of the day, everything that we put out there, whether it is Facebook, whether it is Twitter, whether it is Instagram, that counts as platform. That counts as your representation in the world. Anything that people can Google, can dig up. So we have to be careful about the things we say, the things we put out there, the ways that we engage with other people. If you're not comfortable doing it at the dinner table, then I would tell you maybe don't do it on the internet. Great question, though. Fantastic question. Someone says, how can I build my schedule to blog and write the book at the same time? Yes, that is a great question. And honestly, the way that I've been able to do this is I have had to know that at the times in which I am investing wholeheartedly in writing the book, my priority is not on the blog. And that was something that gripped me for a really long time. I thought I had to hold all the pieces together. I thought I had to execute everything perfectly. And what I had to do was I had to create priorities. So I would tell you, Everett, to create your priorities. What is your priority in this month? Is it to continue to write the book and finish the book? Or is it to invest in writing for the blog? So once you create your priority list, you know what comes first, what comes second, what comes third. And so for my priority list right now during NaNoWriMo, it would be, okay, the first priority is the book writing. And then it's the blog writing. And then it's platform building in the sense of engaging with people and pitching articles to different outlets. Me dialoguing with my readers on a daily basis, to me, that's not platform building. To me, that's just being human with one another. But I found little hacks and little ways to make that even easier. So maybe it's hard for me to be able to respond to every single email where people want to get deep and real with me. But what I've started to do is just create videos on the fly and sending those videos to people. So they get a personal piece of me, but I also am able to save time so I can invest in more people, but also keep my sanity when it comes to all the balls that I have rolling. And so I would tell you to write down the things that are on your priority list and be realistic about how much time and energy you can put into those things and really know, okay, is this a time in which I'm investing in the book writing, or is this the time in which I'm investing in platform building? The great thing about blogs is that once you blog it, it's out there and people can go through your archives and they can have a heyday with those things. They can read all of it at once. They can binge it. And so it stockpiles over time. And that creates a stronger readership for when something like a book comes out. So if you go to the page after this that says the platform, and it says 4 different things: platforms, tools, essentials, and investments. A few things that I'm going to note. Platform. This is basically anything, like we said. Facebook is a platform. A blog is a platform. Instagram is a platform. Twitter is a platform. I would figure out which is the one that you want to use most prominently. For some people, that's Facebook. For some people, their most massive following is on Instagram. For some people, it's the blog, and they use the other social media channels to funnel back into the blog. But those are all platforms. You do not need to do all of them. It is a myth to say that you have to do all of them because you will drive yourself crazy building a platform. I should probably do a whole separate class on platform building because I feel like there's so many things to say about it. For me personally, my biggest priority is the blog. That's my biggest priority, and everything else stems off of that. Tools that you might want to use. One of the tools that I would definitely say is MailChimp. MailChimp, if you want to send out emails or if you want to mail out blog posts. Other tools, I would say Squarespace is one of the best tools for building a website in 2017. WordPress is also a pretty valuable tool, but Squarespace is super, super, super intuitive. I would tell anybody these days, jump onto Squarespace and you will have a beautiful website in seconds. There is an incredibly awesome tool called Buffer. Buffer allows you to schedule social media posts. So you can schedule your Instagrams, you can schedule your Facebooks, you can schedule your Twitters. There have been times where I've literally started at the first of the month. I have written out a bunch of content that I want to put out onto social media, and I schedule it so that I don't have to spend all of this time investing in those platforms. I give myself one day to create the content, and I watch it roll out for the rest of the month. And I don't think that there's anything weird or disingenuous about that. I think it's just knowing where your priorities lie and investing in the areas where you know you need to invest in. Google Docs, Evernote, we've talked about each of those things. There's another productivity app, it's called Trello, and it can be completely awesome when you are mapping out a story. If you want to do the index card method virtually, Trello would be a great place to start with that. Another app that I love is the app If This Then That, and that triggers it so that, like, if you blog on WordPress, then it syncs to your Instagram and it syncs to your Twitter and it makes a pin on Pinterest. You can set up all these different commands. And that's why I don't find platform building to be exhausting at the end of the day, is that I've set up the platforms, I've stuck primarily to the blog, and then I've spread that information from the blog out to the other platforms. I am not creating custom, unique content for every single platform. I am finding a way to take what I've built in one location and spread it out there to feed my readers and to grow and build that platform. The essentials when it comes to blogging and platform building: if you are going to build a blog or a website, you absolutely need an about page. It is the number one page that we kind of cringe over because we think, oh my gosh, I don't know what to say about myself. People want to read your about page. People want to know who you are and what you have to say and where the voice is coming from. Another essential page is to have a contact page on your website and your blog so that people know how to get in touch with you. They can contact you. They can give you opportunities. You can have conversations with them. The other thing, if you can make your archives reachable, that is a huge thing to do. So that's something that we're working on right now for my blog, because the archives are basically, it's a feast. It is allowing your readers to have a feast with content that you have built up and stockpiled throughout the year. And investments, that is where I would say that we should be sparing with our investments, because naturally, like I said earlier in the class, we are going to think, okay, I need to invest in this software, and I need to invest in this writing coach, and I need to invest in this and this and this. And I would weigh your investments. I would first see if you could just do it on your own, if you could read a bunch of articles, if you could sign up for something like Skillshare where you pay 99 cents a month, and start with small investments, because really you have all the tools you need right here. And if anybody tries to come at you and say, hey, you need to pay X, Y, and Z for me to publish this book, that's a scam. I would tell you not to do that. You shouldn't have to pay somebody in order to put your book out there. You might have to pay for materials, but you shouldn't have to pay an individual. And so be mindful of your investments, because a lot of the things that you have are already in your wheelhouse. Investments can often just be excuses that we use to never start and to never push forward. So if you go to the next page, this is going to end up being homework for you guys, because I know this has been a lot of material and we still have some question and answers to go through. But this is something for you to dig deeper into after the class. And so you get to write in your action plan the goal that you are working towards. And then you break that up into all the tasks that you have to do. And so it would be your massive task, and then breaking that into 3 milestones. Milestones are important. They're the bigger chunks that make up that big mountain, basically. And then you're going to write down on the next page, what are going to be your small victories? What are going to be your small rules? Maybe a rule is that you don't let social media tamper with this process. You don't bring social media into it. Your phone is off when you are writing. And what will be your small rewards? Keep them small. Maybe it's like an ice cream cone. I rewarded myself with like Eggo waffles last night, and that was lit. It was awesome. But small wins, small rules, and small rewards. And then to break it down even further, give yourself a bunch of little baby steps, because baby steps are important and they are vital and they stack up and they equal progress at the end of the day. So I'm going to take a sip of water and we are going to dig into questions and answers. So I just talked a lot for the last 3 hours. That was a ton of material, and I hope that that material was useful for you guys. I know it was a lot of stuff and more that we'll even talk about in the Facebook group afterwards. So make sure that you join into the Facebook group. And hey, if you're somebody that wants a writing accountability partner at the end of this, put it in the Facebook group. Somebody is going to raise up their hand and they're going to say that they're with you. We are going to keep this Facebook group alive for 6 months. The reason that we're going to keep it alive for 6 months, unless you guys are actively engaged in it day after day and it becomes your lifeblood, then we won't take it away from you, is that usually after 6 months, we find that engagement really kind of dies down. So invest into it and dig into it while you have it here, because usually what will happen is that it will just become a group that we won't interact with anymore. And so in 6 months, we will let you guys know, and you will be invited into an alumni group if you want to continue to be engaged. But I would say soak it up, especially for the first month. That's when engagement is the most active from people. That is your place to play and hang out with one another. So digging into questions. Someone asked, in case you missed this, how early do we start to protect our privacy, i.e. email address, where we live? Sarah, can you elaborate a little bit on that one as I'm answering another question, just so that I understand what you mean by protecting privacy? Someone says, any advice on being part of book compilations, collaborations, where you're one author among many? Should you have to pay to be a part of the book? What's a good rule of thumb to say yay or nay? I don't know. I could be wrong. I'm of the belief like you shouldn't pay to be a part of anything. That's just me. Your money is precious and your investments are precious. And I think like investments like this class are different than like investing to be allowed to be a part of a project. I say there's too much things out there to do for free that they won't make you pay to join, that I would invest in first. But I think that projects with collaborations and other authors can be incredibly helpful and incredibly useful, and you can learn a lot of things from other authors, and it's cool to be on a part on a team. But if you would pay to be able to be in that, I'm not sure if I would really want to read the fine print on that. What if you interview people for your book? Do you need to pay them? The most common answer for that would be likely no. But I would say you act with integrity. You put it up there up front that you are interviewing them for a book, that you would love to send them a copy of the book when the book is done. But I will tell you, for all the interviews that I have ever done for a book, I have never once been paid to do any of them. But it's one of those things where people naturally want to share their story because it allows them to get in front of other readers that they might not have
have otherwise had. But I've never interviewed somebody or paid somebody to interview them. So that's usually a free exchange of knowledge. I'm sure it differs with other books. I've never been paid to do an interview for a book. And so, yeah, you take that up with the author, but usually it's just a known thing that you will get a copy of the book when the book comes out. Someone says, do you spend more time building a Facebook page over just your profile? Since we can now have followers on profiles, pages seem like crickets at times with engagement when profiles have tons of engagement. Yes. Okay. So Facebook has changed in the last few years. I created a Facebook page for myself at a time where you were not allowed to have followers on your personal page. If you can have followers on your page, I would say just invest in that. But I would also say don't make any difference between your Facebook page and your personal profile page. Treat it all like platform, address all the same things, share all the same content. What I'm finding now is that I have about 10,000 people on my Facebook page and I don't engage it nearly enough. And so what I'm starting to do is set up those triggers so that whenever I do something on my personal page, it's also going to relay onto my Facebook page. And so that I keep up engagement in both places. And the only reason for that is that I had to build it at a time where any other tool was not accessible to me. So if you're able to have followers on your profile, personal page, I would say throw off the privacy settings and share as if that's your main platform. Someone says, okay, Sarah dug into her question more. She said, I mean, if we publish, we still want privacy for our families. Don't want someone showing up on the front porch or my inbox to get slammed. Well, unfortunately, I feel like that's one of the risks that we take. So we can do all that we can to not make our personal details public in the world, like addresses. I wouldn't put out personal addresses. I wouldn't give people a route and a means to get to you or come to your front door. But at the same time, I also feel like we are living in an age where people can get information very quickly. And so while I would tell you to make that as private as possible, there's just some details that I wouldn't put out there. But when it comes to like actually putting stuff out there and not wanting to be emailed about it, I feel like the best thing an author can do or a writer can do is to put an email out there so they can have contact with the people that are reading their words. Unfortunately, not everything that gets said is going to be nice or is going to be kind. That's just how you almost know you made it if people are critiquing it or people are telling you they don't like it. And so putting your email out there is kind of something that you have to do at the end of the day because it allows people to be in contact with you, which is vital and it's important. Someone says, so you use your personal profile as your main hub on Facebook? Yes, I absolutely do. I don't share anything on my Facebook page that I wouldn't be comfortable with my readers knowing about me. To me, the lines, they kind of disappeared a few years ago where it was like, okay, whatever is public is private and whatever is private is public. As you build a platform, those lines will blur and then those lines usually just kind of disappear altogether. You said you sold your book in the summer, but that it's not completely written yet. What does that mean? So with a lot of times with nonfiction, you can write a book proposal without the book being written, and then you can be paid in advance to write the book. So it's basically that the publishing house is paying you to write that book. So I sold my second and third book in December of 2016. And then I had from January to June to write my second book. And then I will start work on my third book. And so that's what I meant by I had completely done some sample material and I had done the book proposal, but the book had not been written yet. And that's the case with a lot of nonfiction, is that usually you can write a book proposal and sell the book and then write the book. But that's not usually the case with fiction, just nonfiction. Someone says, do you have separate emails for work and personal life? I personally don't. It got too overwhelming for me. There were too many inboxes going at once. And so I have two emails. I have info@hannahbruncher.com and I have hannah@hannahbruncher.com. And the two kind of just operate as the same. And that was just because adding another email, I probably would forget to check it or I would neglect it anyway. I'm very sparing with the people that I allow to have my phone number. That's how I set up boundaries. I'm strict on the times in which I'm responding to emails, and I just set up boundaries in daily life so that I do have the chance to have a private life. Someone says, do the three things every scene needs also apply? Does the three things every scene needs also apply to nonfiction and memoirs? I would say anytime that you are writing a scene, I try to implement all three, if not 2 out of 3 in those scenes. I would argue that if something doesn't shift, change, or somebody doesn't grow, the question would be, why is this scene relevant and why are we putting the scene into the book? The thing about memoirs is that a lot of times you can do a scene, pull out, talk about it, do a scene, pull out, talk about it. And so I would say in terms of all the scenes, yes, you want to try to nail those three things. And it helps you go back in the editing process to say, has somebody changed in this? Has somebody grown in this? Have I pushed the plot along in this? It's a really good benchmark. Whew. Okay. Someone asked about a newsletter for platform building. We really need a platform class. I would say focus on one thing. I don't want you to get overwhelmed. So start blogging first. I started a newsletter years after I had been blogging because I had the capacity and more time to do it. So only focus on what you can do and what you can do pretty measurably well, instead of spreading yourself too thin. I don't want you to spread yourself too thin at the end of the day. We don't want to get you away from the bullseye, which hopefully in this is writing books and then building platforms after that. Okay. Going through questions. Can I send an agent chapters of a nonfiction book before the book is done? Yep, absolutely, 100%. A lot of times they don't want the full manuscript. They just want a few sample chapters. Let's see, what other questions? Someone says, I don't read blogs these days, so I stopped writing blogs. Do you feel people still read them? I still read a lot of blogs. I'm still devoted to a lot of blogs, and I still find that in the 8 years of blogging that it is the best way to put content out there, especially long form content. I find that there is still no way around having a personal website at the end of the day. I'm still finding in the publishing world that people still want to know if you are creating and honing in on a specific voice. A lot of people are asking questions about podcasts versus blogs. The reason that I'm saying blogs, if you're in this course, is because if you want to write books, then it's going to be incredibly important to practice your writing voice. And the reason that I blog at the end of the day is because I want to be able to practice that voice. And so make your intentions clear as to why you're blogging. Are you blogging because you want to become a famous blogger? Or are you blogging because you want practice for when you do the book writing? For me personally, it's the latter. I blog to figure out what I have to say. A lot of those blog posts end up being inspiration for book content later. And so I would just tell you here and now, podcasts are great and you can totally invest in a podcast. But if you are looking to practice writing, I would say blogging over a podcast. That's just me personally. I'm not 100% an expert in that because I don't do a podcast. Maybe I should start a podcast. I'm not sure. I put my best energies into the blog because I want to become a better writer at the end of the day. Let's see. Any final questions that you guys have? It is 3:06, so we are like almost out of time. Any other questions about like the writing process in general? Let me see if I can get the question and answers. Someone asked, what is the word count needed for nonfiction? I would say usually the benchmark for nonfiction books usually starts at 50,000 words. And so that would be your starting point. My last manuscript, we needed to clock in at 60,000 words. So it will be different for each one, but definitely you're trying to hit that 50,000 word mark. Someone just asked, how long was your process for If You Find This Letter? Okay. So this is just a real timeline of what it looked like. Not to scare anybody, but let's see. I sent out my first proposal for If You Find This Letter in November of 2012. I signed with my literary agent around Valentine's Day of 2013. We worked on the proposal and sold the manuscript September of 2013. I wrote the book from October of 2013 to January of 2014. I rewrote the book from January of 2014 to May of 2014. I did line editing somewhere between September to October of 2014, and the book came out March of 2015. So from October to March, it was completely out of my hands and I could go and work on anything else. That was a longer process because I had never written a book before. For my second book that is coming out, I would say we started working on the proposal process in July of 2016. We sold the 2 books in December of 2016. I had the time to write the book from January to June of 2017. I edited from June up until literally a week ago. And we're about to get into line editing and the book will come out in May. So it's a long process, but it's an awesome process because you learn a lot in the process about yourself and your writing, and you learn how to be a better writer. Someone says, on average, with query writing, proposal, edit, publishing, if you're going the traditional route, what total time frame are you looking at, start to selling? Well, I think that's kind of what I just outlined there, so I didn't even realize I was answering that question. So what? We're saying the first book for me personally was from November of 2012 to November of 2012 to March of 2015. And so the second one would be from June, July of 2016 to May 2018. So it is a little bit of a longer process. Do you reuse blog content in books? Yes, I do reuse blog content in books. Not in large chunks, not a lot of it, but there are some things that I've written in my blog that I know that some people will pick up my book and they will never have read my blog. And so I always go through, I always rewrite it, but I definitely reach back into the archives for things that I've already said and said well, so that I don't have to recreate the wheel every time. Someone just asked, what kind of prayers do you pray for your readers and for your own skills and influence? That's a really sweet, great question. I love what Mark Batterson says. Mark Batterson says that he says every single book that he sells is an answered prayer. And I love that more than anything. And I try to live by that mindset. I pray more than anything that my books will be underlined, that they'll be highlighted, and that what they will really do is they will propel people to live better, stronger, more empowered lives. At the end of the day, my influence, all of that, I really funnel into what I told you guys earlier about doing for one what you wish you could do for all. That's the most important thing. That's all I really care about, is that if I can't see the person right in front of me, then it doesn't matter if there are thousands of people watching. I'm a big believer that if you have followers, do something that is follow worthy, point to something that is follow worthy, invest in your craft more than you invest in life as a spectator sport. I said it at the beginning of the class, and I will emphasize it now, is that we have to be able to quit watching other people live their lives. We need to set out to do the dang thing. We need to sit down in the writing chair, and we need to create lives of our own. Okay. I've got time for just a few more questions. So Marvia asked, how do you practice boundaries with yourself if the majority of your writing is blogging, but you're trying to get more discipline in book writing? I find I can easily blog, but book writing is tougher, therefore my go-to, but I don't want to keep doing that. I think that probably the reason that that is harder for you is because blogging is instant gratification. You publish something and you know immediately whether people like it, whether they approve of it, what they think of it, if it hits them, if it impacts. I would say book writing is an investment in the future. And just like investing money, it is incredibly important to invest in your future. You can pay your bills in the here and now, but do you have a savings account? And so I would say that's kind of the way that I look at book writing, is that it's going to pay off in the future. And so we have to be willing to invest in it in the here and now. While it's easier to dedicate ourselves to short-term projects like blogging, those long-form projects are going to teach us discipline. They're going to teach us resilience. And they're going to be the things that end up in bookstores. And so really kind of figuring out like what is the investment that you want to make, how much time you want to give to blogging, and how much time you want to give to book writing, and what matters for this day, this month in 2017. So I think that might be all of the questions that we have for today. You guys have asked some fantastic questions. We have the Facebook group that you can join into to ask even more of your questions. You will be getting a recording of this class. It has been fantastic to be with you guys. I hope that this content has hit home. I hope that you have loved it. I hope that it has been worthwhile, that you have a lot of notes. We are available at info@hannahbrencher.com to answer any more questions that you have. This has been a great day. I don't have a voice left, so I know that means I've talked a ton. But I will be engaging with you guys and hanging out with you in the Facebook group. Be sure to let me know when you're sitting down to do your writing hours this week, and be sure to lean into one another in the Facebook group. Ask for accountability partners. I promise you that they are out there. We are all here with you. We are cheering you on. We are pushing you further, whether it is 2017 or 2018. This could be the year of the dang book. So let's get after it. I love you guys. You are awesome. Thank you so much for letting me share my heart. It means the world that I get to teach these classes. And hey, see you in 2018, people. Peace out.